Yeah, we are live now.
So good evening, doctors and all the participants. I welcome all in today's session on from Adolescent Health Committee FOGSI and No to Violence Against Women Committee webinar UDAAN. So it's time to introduce our convener of this program today, Dr. Supriya Jaiswal madam and Dr. Kiranmai Devineni madam. Although madam doesn't need any kind of introduction, but it's my formal responsibility to introduce ma'am. Madam Dr. Supriya madam is the Vice President, Patna Obstetrics and Gynecological Society, and she is the Chairperson of Adolescent Health Committee, FOGSI. And Dr. Kiranmai madam, madam is the Chairperson, FOGSI, No to Violence Against Women Committee, and she's the core member of FOGSI Youth Cell Committee. So with this short introduction, I request Dr. Supriya madam to take over the session for further proceedings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening. I bring warm greetings to all of you present here. Respected Chief Guest, President FOGSI, Dr. Rishikesh Pai sir. Guest of honor, Dr. Madhuri Patel madam, Secretary General FOGSI, Dr. Alka Pandey madam, the Vice President FOGSI. Dr. Sampat Kumari madam has actually sent her apology. She couldn't join. She's not well. And all the faculty members, delegates, and dear friends. This is the first episode of UDAAN. The first episode of UDAAN, a webinar organized by FOGSI Adolescent Health Committee and No to Violence Against Women Committee FOGSI. So with these words, we start the webinar, and I request Mr. Suman to kindly start with the prayer.
Kurutvang kalyanam arogyam dhanasampada shubham kurutvang kalyanam arogyam dhanasampada shatrubuddhi vinashaya deepajyotirnamostute deepajyotirnamostute shubham kurutvang kalyanam arogyam dhanasampada shubham kurutvang kalyanam arogyam.
Thank you. Now, we have all the members joined here. I'm very thankful to everyone who have joined, Dr. Krishnendu Gupta sir, Rosa madam, Mary, and everyone. And actually, Dr. Kiranmai Devini ma'am, we both have planned this program. And to begin with, our Dr. Rishikesh Pai sir, I would now like to invite our chief guest, Dr. Rishikesh Pai sir, our President FOGSI, who in his presidential year has started with the theme of Swasth Nari, Sukhi Nari, Badlav, Ekikaran, Samanta, and Takniki. Sir, you have infused so much of positive energy in your team FOGSI with a very successful Badlav Yatra. You have created a benchmark that is still to continue. We are really very thankful to you for taking out time from your busy schedule to join this webinar and grace the occasion, sir. So just to formally introduce you.
No. It's okay, Supriya. Everyone knows.
Thank you,
we
sir.
don't want to
Thank you.
waste our relevant time. Na?
Yes.
So thank
Kindly
you very
bless.
much for inviting me. I'm very happy. First of all, let me recognize our Dr. Madhuri Patel, our Secretary General. And, nowadays there's a lot of talk about, women leadership. And me and Dr. Madhuri had gone to just now to the FIGO leadership meeting in UK. And I was telling them that in FOGSI, we have all women leaders only now. So, we are already leading the world because in our society, women are leading almost in all roles. And we know that Dr. Madhuri is the first Women Secretary General of FOGSI. So, it is she represents our progress in achieving equality, gender equality in our workplace. So we have to start from our residence, and Madhuri is a proper depiction of that women enhancement and women equality. So I would like to first of all also congratulate both of you, Dr. Supriya and Dr. Kiranmai. Both are very dynamic chairmen. All the 28 chairmen are very dynamic. The group is very good, and I'm very happy that they are all very active. And I must also recognize Dr. Alka Pandey and Dr. Sampat Kumari, you are Vice President I'm very lucky. I was a lot of very good people working with me. Dr. Madhuri is excellent Secretary General, very hardworking. Works till 2 o'clock in the night. Very conscientious and takes care of the society. Then our vice president, all of them are very good, and all our chairmen and all our web the master and deputy secretary general Suvarna, and our all our representatives, SAPOG, AFOG, FIGO, everyone is doing fantastic work, and all our members as well. Many of them are past members who are doing very good work, and I can see a lot of you. Our Krishnendu is there, who is the AOFOG representative, who is sitting there, and I can see Dr. Kalpana, who is a very active, dynamic person. Dr. Jyoti Banglowala, Dr. Charmila, again another firebrand. Dr. Rosa Olai, again another past vice president. Dr. Mary Ann. Dr. Vinita Singh is there, Dr. Aruna Suman, another deadly, Dr. Shobha Godi, our family planning queen, I must say that, and a lot of other people are there. So, it's I've been very fortunate, and, in my year, we have also now during the Republic Day celebration, we launched, that is, Supriya is also there, Arwari, and during the Republic Day celebration, I launched the Samanta initiative, that is Gender Equality Initiative, which our past president Shanta Kumari has already done one part of it, that is the violence against women, which is very important in eliminating that violence so that we can bring gender equality to much, it's a one component of it. But I need, what I wanted in Samanta was to also do positive, promotion of this gender equality. And one of the things I want to do is that to see that we have affirmation. Of course, we in our society we have a lot of, most of them are women leaders, but in other societies women leaders are not that common. So that's why affirmative action is necessary to see that women leaders are there in every field, even in research, in hierarchy, in professorial appointments, in bodies where decision making is done. In all these things, we need women leaders to be there. So this Samantha, which I brought, initiated, one of the things I would also like to do is focus on awareness. And what we are planning is the All India National Run for Gender Equality, which we will be planning now. It's a large-scale effort, and with the help of all of you, I hope we can achieve that effort. And also, we must promote Beti Bacha, Beti Padhao in a very big way. So, it's in my mind, and so we'll try to work with the Women and Child Ministry of the government, which for them this is a very big program, and we will strive to achieve that. And if you look at the National Family Health Survey number 5, the sex ratio has improved. So that's one subjective, objective parameter of how gender equality has panned out in our country, and it is in a very good way. For us, women are a very important part, and we don't look at women. Say, for example, in my life, all women leaders, I look at them, it's a natural thing. I find it abnormal because I've been born and brought up in an environment where all women are equal. So, men gynecologists understand uh, about the relevance of women more than anyone else, I think, because we deal with women in all walks of life. So anyway, I'm congratulating you again for this wonderful thing, and I hope this UDAAN will be initiative will be taken by you all over, and we will do more and more such programs. So thank you very much, and wish you the very best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your words of wisdom. Thank you very much for joining, sir. Thank you. Over to Kiranmai, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. I mean, the gender equality, Samantha, part of it, and the Badlav. So very important. And I thank you for your blessings, Varudan. And thank you, sir. So now it's time to introduce our very dear Madhuri Madam, who is Secretary General FOGSI, but we know Madam closely since almost 1 to 2 years. And she's so down to earth, humble, very, very hardworking. I mean, we have to redefine the word hardworking once we see our leaders of FOGSI. I have had the good fortune of, taking part with Madam in some of the scientific deliberations. Madam has been Joint Secretary FOGSI, Committee member of FIGO Preterm Birth, Associate Editor General of Obstetrics and Gynecology of India, and she's an honorary clinical associate in Wadia Hospital, Parel, Mumbai. and she's been
Thank
appointed
you, Kiran.
ma'am.
Thank you, Kiran.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
also
Thank
know
you.
that madam is very, very keenly interested in maternal mortality, near miss, and so many other national health policy issues, everything related to women's health. Ma'am, thank you so much for joining, ma'am. We would like to hear your words of message.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Kiran, for your kind and generous word. Respected our most vibrant and the visionary president, Dr. Rishikesh Pai. We have seen his program since last 4 months since he has taken over. I had been witness to the yatra, how wonderfully he has planned. That morning we have a camp, then afternoon we used to have a meeting with the press conference, and evening we used to have CME with the local society. So it was a very good execution, and I must congratulate Rishikesh for the same. At the same time, he wants to have a badla, which he talked about it. He wants a gender equality, and all this, he has planned very well. And I must say, he's a visionary. And Rishikesh, congratulate you, and I'm really enjoying with you working together. We had been to Delhi for our program with the FIGO second meeting we had in London, and 2 days yesterday we were with Banaras, Varanasi. So we had a wonderful time, and we are really enjoying. Rishikesh, thank you very much. And then we have our Vice President, Dr. Alka Pandey, and Dr. Sampath Kumari could not join, but Alka, working with Alka is also wonderful. And of course, I cannot say anything to our conveners. They are so good, Supriya and this Kiran Mai. They are very good, very respectable, and they are doing the work excellent. And I must, Kiran, should I narrate a story of your our presentation? Kiran, if you say yes, I will narrate it. Yeah. Kiran, what had happened, Kiran and myself were moderator for one of the panel at Hyderabad, and I made Kiran sleep at 3 o'clock night, you know. And morning she could
Ma'am,
not get up only. Morning she could not get up, and I say, "Where is Kiran?" So everybody says she's sleeping. So that was the situation has happened.
I
So Kiran,
understood the definition of diligence then, ma'am.
that's what I wanted to narrate this story. That Kiran, you have to when you have to grow up and up. I wish you grow up and up, and so you have to remain awake throughout the night. Then, of course, my dear student and now colleagues and friend, Dr. Sharmila, she's also very, very sincere, and I wish her best luck. And how can I, not say anything about Krishnendu? Krishnendu is not only my brother, but I always tell him, you are my critic. So whatever, I do, and if you don't like it, you have to talk on the face, and he always does that. Krishnendu, thank you very much. And I can also talk about Rosa. When she was the vice president, I was the joint secretary, or I think I was a joint treasurer, and we had a lovely time. And Rosa has really taken adolescent committee to the great height. And Supriya, you can always take her advice because she has innovation, and then she will ask you to implement. And of course, we have Dr. Vinita, Dr. Aruna, Dr. Shobha, Dr. Rose, Parul, Dr. Marian, Dr. Veena, Dr. Sundaram, Dr. Kalpana, Dr. Jyoti, Dr. Manisha, Dr. Supriya Alware, Dr. Yogini, and Dr. Gauri. So, dear friends, very good evening to all of you. At the outset, I would like to thank, organizer Dr. Rishikesh, Dr. Alka, Sampath Kumari, Supriya, and, Kiran Mai for giving me this opportunity. As we all of us are knowing that the FOGSI is most vibrant and prestigious organization and one of the largest organizations in the world. And we are all 266 member bodies, and all members, 39,500 plus, are all committed to women's health, which we can, visualize, and we can, imagine how much work we are doing, not imagine, we are visualizing and we are experiencing it. And what is happening, we have 28 committees, and all are focused on that particular aspect, and they are really doing excellent. All committee chair, including Supriya and they Kiran Maya, are doing excellent. And today's adolescent problem, we know that it is the largest, in India, the adolescent, the largest population in the world, and about 253 millions adolescents are there from India. So every fifth or sixth, person in India is adolescent. And of course, they have many problems. Before problems, they have to take care of the good nutrition, good education, and they require, guidance, they require counseling. So they grow in the good, healthy adult, that is a whole, thing we have to concentrate. Secondly, they all are facing lots of problems. The common problems are like self-esteem and body, image, stress, then bullying, depression, cyber addiction, drinking, smoking, teenage pregnancy, and of course, underage sex and poverty, and all violence and mental health. So there are so many problems. So today we have galaxy of eminent speakers and chairperson who are going to enlighten on these topics, which will definitely help us in day-to-day practice to benefit our adolescents as well as the other women. So I, congratulate Dr. Rishikesh and Dr. Alka and Dr. Sampath Kumari, Supriya and Livya Kiran Mai for the most webinar, and I wish them best luck. So thank you very much once again for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining and for your words of wisdom for us, for the future action also. So, Dr. Sampath
Thank you,
Madam could
madam.
not join today. So, we have our dear Vice President Alka Pandey Madam, who is again.
Don't introduce me.
Yes, ma'am. Few words.
Let us.
You are our vice president, but we find you to be really, kind of person whom we can follow in our future. Very humble, very hardworking. Your work speaks, ma'am. You don't speak much. Madam is
But
yes,
Kiran,
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Please.
okay.
Say.
So, respected President, sir, my dear Secretary General FOGSI, Madhuri ji, Krishnendu sir, Rosa ma'am, Charmila, Shobha, Aruna Suman. I am very lucky that Kiran and Supriya have called me in this webinar and has allowed me to share the platform with so many dear friends of mine. I've already named Rosa, Charmila, Shobha, Aruna, Vinita. So all are there. And I'm really very fortunate to have such hardworking, so sweet chairpersons with me. Kiran Mai, also Supriya. Supriya is from my state only, and she is very much attached to me. And I hope that she works well with Kiran Mai and takes a great UDAAN. And both of you are doing wonderful job. And I wish you all the best for your endeavors. And I must say that I'm really very lucky to have such a president with me, to have such a secretary general with me, to have so sweet and hardworking chairpersons with me, including Supriya. So wish you all the best.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Alkadi. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think with this, we'll move on to the section 1.
Yes.
Yeah. Can we have the next session details to be projected? So we have divided this webinar into 4 important talks. I should say we were very lucky to have the the topmost faculty whose talks people really look forward to, and experts in their field, and also the chairpersons, including Krishnendu Gupta sir, who has generously obliged to join us today. So the first talk is by Dr. Charmila. For this, we have chairpersons, dear Krishnendu Gupta sir. Can we have sir's CV? Sir has specifically instructed me to not to go on with the CV. So I have selected few things which I really admire sir about. Sir heads the department of OBG at Vivekananda Institute of Medical Sciences, Kolkata. Is the Deputy Secretary General of AOFOG. Is member of FIGO Committee on Climate Change and Toxic Environmental Exposure. Sir is co-chair for Women's Social and Sexual Rights Committee of CEFOG and chair of Sexual Rights Health Committee of AOFOG. And I have known sir since he was the chair of ICOG. Very close connection since then. Thank you, sir, for joining us today and obliging our wish. Then we have Dr. Vinita Singh, madam. Madam also is a very wonderful, dear person. Right now, she's president of Patna Obstetrics and Gynecological Society. She was the governing council member of ICOG, YTP committee chairperson, and then member of Safe Motherhood Committee and lot of other committees. And she's organized so many conferences and has awarded MG Mishra Award and George Mohani Award in 2012. Welcome, ma'am. Then we have Dr. Aruna Suman. So she's a dear friend. I can go on with her and her qualities and all, but right now she's a professor, HOD, and vice principal of government.
Thank you, Kiran. Thank you,
She's,
Dr. Kiran Mai and Dr. Supriya Jaiswal, for the
she's
opportunity
joint secretary and
to
she's
be with
present.
you all today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Aruna, you always
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I request Vinita madam to introduce our speaker for this first session, Dr. Charmila madam. And then we can have
So
Krishna.
very good evening to all of you. At the very outset, I would like to thank Dr. Kiran Bhai and Dr. Supriya for making me part of this wonderful program of UDAAN. So it's really a wonderful program in which so many adolescents will be benefited. And I'm feeling really proud, privileged to introduce my dear friend, Dr. Charmila Yao. We enjoy so many, programs whenever we meet, and we enjoy togetherness. So she is Vice President-elect FOGSI 2024, Chairperson Clinical Research Committee FOGSI 2016 to 2018, ICOG Governing Council Member 2021 to 2023, National Coordinator UNICEF FOGSI PCA, and she is also National Coordinator Medha FOGSI PG Program, National Coordinator of ISAR Gurukul 2022, WHO CRO MDSR India member, past Secretary Trichy Obsangani Society, President Menstrual Hygiene Management Consortium 2018 to 2020, and she was also Joint Secretary Justices India Association. So over to Dr. Charmila.
Thank you so much, Vinita. It's always a pleasure to be in a program where you are there. I'd like to thank the conveners, Dr. Kiran Mai and Dr. Supriya, for the opportunity. It's an honor to be in a program where my teacher, Dr. Madhuri Patel, gave the blessings, and it's always a happy moment to see Dr. Rosa ma'am. She spreads happiness always. Thank you so much, the chairpersons, Dr. Krishnendu sir, Dr. Vinita, and Dr. Aruna Suman. I'll just share my screen and start my talk. Actually, Kiran Mai made me read for this talk, and as I told her, I've done a WHO course on this, but when you need to make a presentation, it's totally different. And thank you, Kiran Mai, because this is definitely necessary for us, because we think it's only deliveries which the obstetrician needs to do and manage just the clinical part of women's health. There's something that we need to know, and that's about the sexual and reproductive health rights which every woman needs in her life. So what are the reproductive rights according to the WHO? It's a right to the individual to decide whether to reproduce and have reproductive health. Nobody can force that on her. And this includes her right to plan a family, terminate a pregnancy when she wants to, use contraceptives, learn about sex education in public schools. She can actually demand that sex education be provided to her in all schools and colleges, and the right to gain access to reproductive health services. What about sexual health? Even though we talk about reproductive health, there's always a taboo about talking about sexual health, and WHO defines it as a right to equality and non-discrimination, the right to be free from torture or to cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment or punishments, the right to privacy, the rights to the highest attainable standard of health and social security, the rights to information, which includes education, the right of a lady to marry and to find a family and to enter into marriage with the full and free consent of the intending spouses, and she needs equality in and at the dissolution of marriage, her right to decide the number and spacing of her children, the rights to freedom of opinion and expression, and the right to an effective remedy for when there's a violation of fundamental rights which she is facing with. What about the history of this sexual and reproductive health services? They were adopted first in Cairo in 1994 when it was conducted under the aegis of the United Nations, which is called as the International Conference on Population and Development, which happened in Cairo. It laid out a very bold, clear, and comprehensive definition of reproductive health, and it says it's a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. It is not merely the absence of disease or infirmity, and it relates to all the matters to the reproductive system and to its functional process. So we need to take a wholesome view of the lady. It is just not absence of disease. It needs to be complete physical, mental, and social well-being. But what happened in 1995, there was a conference in Beijing, and they reaffirmed the IPCD agreement and defined the human rights of women as including the right to have control over and decide freely, and responsibility on matters related to their sexuality, which should be free of coercion, discrimination, and violence. But did every country follow this? Even though when the IPCD said that you need services which includes family planning, maternal health care, safe abortion when it's not against the law, education on sexuality and reproductive health, and the prevention and appropriate treatment of infertility, reproductive tract infections, and STDs, which includes HIV, AIDS. And this was the first global agreement that created a common language, and it also defined reproductive health and listed the elements of reproductive health care. But we have to remember that sexual rights, even though reproductive rights has been accepted, sexual rights are still a challenging element in various conferences. Many governments have resisted including the term sexual rights in consensus documents because they are not willing to endorse the right of women and girls to bodily autonomy. They do not want to endorse the right of adolescents to make independent decisions about sexual activity, and they do not want to accept the diverse sexual orientations and gender identities. So sexual rights is still in the starting phase. It's not gone up at all. In 2000, when they crafted the MDG goals, they actually omitted sexual and reproductive health altogether because they had a problem saying that it may actually block the adoption of the Millennium Declaration. Because they do not wanted a block, they just removed sexual and reproductive health rights. And it took almost 7 years for activists and advocates to gain a global agreement to add a target to the MDGs. And then it was called as universal access to reproductive health. Here also, the word sexual health was not added. The UN's current development agent, called as the Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, has been adopted by all the UN member states in 2015, now includes sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights. That is, they've added sexual health, but they've omitted sexual rights. So still there's a block, and people are not willing to embrace the word sexual rights. The agenda's 17 SDG goals, which were kept, had 169 targets to be achieved by 2030, and now it includes universal access to sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights in accordance with the Cairo and the Beijing agreements of 1994 and 95. But the wording signaled an embrace of the principles and commitments expressed in these two documents, but still there's a lack of consensus among countries to go beyond them. They still do not want to include the word sexual rights. So the SDG targets which deal with the reproductive and sexual health rights are the target 3.7 and 5.6. 3.7 says by 2030, we need to ensure universal access to all sexual and reproductive health care services, and which will include family planning, information education, and the integration of reproductive health into national strategies and programs. And target 5.6 took up gender equality goal, and that's an universal access to sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights, and it's accordance with the previously negotiated UN agreements. Although these targets, 3.1 and 3.7 and 5.6, offers us a solid basis for moving forward, they do not offer a comprehensive agenda for sexual and reproductive health rights. So, and also there's a limited access for the needy in all these agreements. They overlook the adolescent who's younger than 15. They do not think about the adult who's more than 49 years of age. They do not bother about the sex workers. They do not want to think about the person who's injecting drugs. They do not want to talk about the people with disabilities. Racial and ethnic minorities are being pushed away. Indigenous populations are not taken into the category of giving them access to reproductive health care, and the LGBTQ individuals are just left alone. So that's why this document is very important. And this is the Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights for All, the Lancet Commission, which came out in June 2018. And they've given certain recommendations for low, medium income countries. And they've said that cost and impacts of the following services need to be provided to women in the low, middle income countries. And that includes contraceptive services, pregnancy-related and newborn care, which will include maternal and newborn health care, safe abortion services, and post-abortion care, and the treatment of major curable sexually transmitted infections. Because there were so many goals in the UN agreement document, so at least the Commission came out with a group, at least, which could be followed at least a point in time, because we need to start somewhere to gain, to give us the help that women need in their life. So the necessity for these sexual and reproductive health rights are definitely needed for sustainable development, because they're all linked to gender equality, the well-being of a lady. They have an impact on maternal, newborn, child, and adolescent. They've got a role in shaping the future economic development and environmental sustainability. And that's why sexual and reproductive health rights are extremely important to each country for the development. So what is the Commission reports which was given by this association? They said everyone has a right to make decisions which is needed to govern their bodies. It should be free of stigma, discrimination, coercion. And these are related to sexuality, reproduction, and the use of the health services. And it should be actually accessible and affordable to all individuals, irrespective of their age, the marital status, the socioeconomic status, what race they belong to should not matter, the ethnicity of them should not matter, the sexual orientation or gender identity should not matter when the services needs to be accessible to all of them. Actually, the investments in this part of the reproductive services is very modest, and it's affordable for most of the countries. Maybe the less developed countries will face some funding gaps, but they can continue with some external assistance. So the obligation of all countries, according to the report, is all countries should incorporate these services into the universal health coverage, and they should pay special attention to the poorest of the poor and the most vulnerable population. And the countries must also take actions beyond the health sector to change the social norms, laws, and policies to uphold the human rights. And the most crucial reform should be regarding gender equality, and this should give women greater control over their bodies and lives. So the recommendations of these commissions, if we want to summarize, it will be the freedom to choose. Every individual has got the right to choose the decisions and the choices regarding their own bodies, and which concerns sexual and reproductive health. These entitlements should include an unhindered access to a range of health facilities, goods, services, and information, and should fulfill the right to sexual and reproductive health for each woman and child. And the respect for sexual rights should be offered. There should be a respect for bodily integrity, privacy, and personal autonomy. They should freely define their own sexuality, which includes sexual orientation and gender identities and expression. They should have the freedom to decide when they want to be sexually active. They should have the freedom to choose their sexual partners, have safe experience with sex, decide when to marry and when to have a child. And for this, they need an access to the information, resources, services, and support. And this should be all free from discrimination, coercion, exploitation, and violence. The information which we need to give should include comprehensive sexuality education, which WHO mandates, and that is related to sexual function and satisfaction, sexual and gender-based violence and coercion, the choice of safe and effective contraceptive methods, safe and effective antenatal childbirth and postnatal care, abortion services, infertility services, prevention and treatment of sexually transmitted infections, which includes HIV, and the prevention, management, and treatment of reproductive cancers. All that should be available to every woman who wants it. And you should never leave anyone behind. Everyone should have access. There should be universal health coverage for these services, and it should not be available to people who just pay for them. It should be available for everybody in spite of the paying capacity. And this should be given priority even when the program is started. All these inequities should be identified and prioritized even before the program starts. It should benefit the less advantaged people to an equal or greater degree than the one who's more advantaged. And for this, the country needs to have a target, because progressive realization is something which every country can make they can make continuous progress. They have to just start somewhere, and then the realization happens, and then it progresses. And that's why it has to start somewhere. It can start from a small point, but everybody should make the effort to start. And adolescent sexual reproductive health rights also needs lots of attention, because in many studies it's found that first sexual intercourse which happens in an adolescent results from coercion or violence. And the proportion of girls who get married before the age of 15 is most prevalent and the poorest of households. And when they have an early marriage, is associated with early motherhood. So you need strategies to meet the need of the adolescents, and this should be in the form of delivering comprehensive sexuality education, reduce the prevalence of child marriage, address sexual violence, promote equitable gender norms, and provide financial incentives and education to these adolescent girls. So there's something called a demographic dividend. That is, where when you have an accelerated economic growth and development in a country, what it translates to is you'll have a large cohort of young population which will be moving into adulthood, and they will have fewer children because it's a economically developing country, and they do not want to burden themselves with too many children. And what happens is they will have fewer people to support because of the lesser children that they have. And when you have the same income and assets, which is equally distributed among a lesser number of children, they can actually use its household and state resources to invest in education and economy in the country. This is not a vicious cycle, it's a virtuous cycle, and it will cause a larger, better educated workforce with fewer children to support. And these children in turn will have the opportunity to be more educated and employable. And the countries which have harnessed this demographic dividend, improved health and education, attracted foreign investment, enacted economic policies that help create jobs, and this resulted in economic growth and reductions in poverty and inequality. And that's why we need to give importance to sexual and reproductive health rights of women. And the interventions are, as I said, sexuality education, which is comprehensive, modern contraceptives, counseling and services, obstetric care, antenatal childbirth and postnatal care with newborn care, safe abortion services, and the facility to treat the complications of unsafe abortions, prevention and treatment of HIV and other STIs, prevention, detection services, and referrals for cases of sexual and gender-based violence, the management of reproductive cancers, especially cervical cancer, information and counseling services for subfertility, infertility, sexual health, and well-being of women are the interventions which are needed in every place and country to work for a better growth. So the turning points in sexual and reproductive health rights, if you want to look into it, the Nirbhaya incident which happened in Delhi, the gang rape case, was a turning point in activism against sexual violence on several fronts. It causes more serious attention to the issue in the media. There's more frequent reporting of such crimes. The procedures have been fast-tracked for trying rape cases in India. There's a fast-tracking of the legal reforms on sexual violence, and this has been passed by the Indian Parliament. And there's a less politically cautious discussion of sexual violence on international platforms such as the UN, which was a little afraid in the earlier days to talk about these type points on sexual and reproductive health rights. And it also exposed the mindset that plagues many of us in the world, that is political figures, religious leaders, lawyers, and other professionals, after the Nirbhaya case, made sexist and degrading comments on the matter. They blamed the young women and rape victims in general, and they said they were asking for trouble through the way they dress. How they move on in public they said was making an impact on sexual violence, and they also blamed the socialization with unrelated male friends and so on. But we have to remember that the public exposure of these people's biases in turn galvanized activists to make louder demands for change, and that is how the soft power was galvanized to make an impact on sexual and reproductive health rights in India. And the next, which had an impact on the rights, is the Me Too movement. And the Twitter hashtag in 2017, October, when it went viral, thousands of women shared their experience of sexual assault and abuse. It was not limited to Hollywood, and it spread throughout America and worldwide. And the stories varied from the street to the workplace, from unwanted advances to coercion, and then on to rape. So it was crucial in confronting the stigma and shame associated with being sexually assaulted or harassed. And it showed that sexual violence is not an isolated occurrence, but it's a deeply entrenched problem in society. It can happen in the most developed country, and it can also happen in the least developed country. And that's why Me Too made a big impact on sexual and reproductive health rights of women. It created awareness, and this is what Tarana Burke wanted when she first tweeted in 2006 regarding the sexual harassment that she faced. It raised awareness about the overwhelming prevalence of sexual assaultment, and it also called the perpetrators to be held accountable. And in US, it was successful in removing the perpetrators, who may be chief executive officers, to elected officials, to politicians, from the positions of power. And this power, which had allowed them to commit these acts in the first place, when the power was removed, it caused an impact for the movement. And it not only proved that the strength of power of strength is in numbers, it also brought about the possibility of bringing out a cultural change by rejecting shame and stigma and demanding higher standards. And that's why when FOGSI has brought out this committee on violence against, no to violence against women, I think it's all part of the movement and we should take it forward. So the aims of the commission, of the Guttmacher Lancet Commission, it presented quite a bold vision for advancing beyond the boundaries. Even though these were all started 20 years back, the discussion in the current context is much bigger. And we have to remember that there needs to be a mobilization of women's groups, human rights group, and you need to engage adolescents, men, and health activists for moving the agenda forward. For the HIV/AIDS movement in 1990s and 2000, civil society groups had spearheaded the motion, and that's why their involvement is very much important for pushing forward the sexual and reproductive health rights of women, so that we achieve much more. And civil society needs to participate for an advocate for changing the mindset, and we need to hold the governments and other implementing organizations accountable for the promises made and the obligations which have been incurred. Probably the unfinished agenda is large, but you've got a rapid pace of technological change like the Twitter, and because you can now tweet like, but what's about what is happening, and somebody in the higher official may listen to it, and there may be a progress. And that's why this technological change is going to help to achieve a universal access to sexual and reproductive health rights. And we have to make it inclusive and equitable, because attention needs to be given to the protection of all human rights. And what about the situation in India now? Even though we have got lots of so-called progressive laws and policies regarding reproductive health, we have failed to take a women's rights-based approach, instead focusing on demographic targets like population control. Still, there's an undermining of the women's reproductive autonomy in India, because you need a spousal consent for access to reproductive health services in many states. And despite a national law which penalizes marriages of girls below 18 years of age, we still have the highest number of child marriages in the country. And in spite of having such many policies and schemes which guarantee women maternal health care, 20% of all maternal deaths in India globally is because of the Indian mortality rate. So the key message will be, you've got the components of sexual and reproductive health rights, which includes gender-based violence, HIV/AIDS, and other sexually transmitted infections, contraception, maternal and newborn health, abortion services, infertility services, and reproductive cancers management. And for all that you need the services to be available, education should be provided, counseling services should be done in par for whatever the need is, information should be provided for every individual who wants information on sexuality and sexual health. And we have to remember that individuals have an autonomy and they've got a choice in accessing services. But when you're providing all these services, do not forget there's a distinct group which needs your help, and that's the adolescent between the age of 10 to 19, the adult above the age of 50, the sex workers, displaced people and refugees, the people of diverse sexual orientation, gender identities, and sex characteristics, women with disabilities, people who inject drugs, racial and ethnic minorities, immigrant groups, indigenous peoples, all need universal access to care. And the disadvantaged, poor, rural, less educated, the ones living in urban slums, all need our care so that we provide the best services possible. I would like to conclude by saying that reproductive and sexual health rights are a part of comprehensive health rights, and to ensure the fulfillment of these rights, a country needs to have in place a well-developed public health system that is capable of providing healthcare services, which should be comprehensive, good quality, should be accessible to all, free at the point of access, and above all, they should be accountable to the citizens to whom they provide the services. Thank you so much, Dr. Kiranmai, Dr. Supriya, and team for the opportunity.
Wonderful presentation, Charmila. I think it's so wonderful that Kiranmai and Supriya chose you for this excellent presentation, because it's a very exhaustive presentation, and I think you will do great service to everybody watching it if you can make a PDF file of your presentation and post it, because I think this is a very important topic. We don't bother about it. And as you said very brilliantly in your presentation, it was even written off so that the MDG goals may not be fulfilled. So that was the apathy towards, this sexual and reproductive women's rights. So I think you've really delivered a very nice presentation, educative, and thank you very much. We learned a lot.
Thank you so much.
Well done. And I really compliment Supriya Jaiswal as well as Kiranmai for this wonderfully planned webinar, to all the wonderful speakers here, to my co-chairs, Dr. Vinita and Dr. Aruna. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. And of course, we had a visionary president, Rishikesh, giving a very nice overview of his, thought for this entire year, along with wonderful words from our respected Secretary General Madhuri as well. So thank you, Kiranmai. Thank you, Supriya, for this opportunity. And I wish the rest of the program very well indeed.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Your expert comments were really added so much to the, the wonderful talk that Charmila had given. Aruna, can we have your concluding remarks?
Yeah. Thank you, Kiran. Thank you, Supriya, for this opportunity. And it's my privilege to be a chairperson along with Dr. Krishnendu Gupta, sir, and Vinita, Dr. Vinita. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was a very excellent talk, and that is the need of the hour. We always learn our subject, talk about our subject so much. It's best, Kiran, that you have chosen such a subject. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, over to you, Supriya, for the next.
Thank you. And thank you, Krishnendu, sir, Vinita, madam, and Aruna Suman, madam. Once again, I thank you people for coming and chairing the session. Thank you. So moving on to the second session, we have a wonderful speaker, Dr. Shobha Gudi. And to chair the session, we have Dr. Rosa Aulay, ma'am, Dr. Parul Kotawala. And so we just to briefly introduce Dr. Rosa Aulay, ma'am. What can I say? She is at present the director, Aulay Hospital and Research Center. She has got many affiliations as a board of membership committee, Family Planning Associations of India, chairperson SBC Madhya Pradesh, representative board of trustees.
So Priya, we can go for the subject. Thank you.
You have been a very good visionary, madam. You have been working so well in the Adolescent and Health Committee, and I'll really look forward to all your suggestions. You have already, yes,
definitely.
Welcome you, madam, and thank you for coming. And the next chairperson is Dr. Parul Kotawala, sir. So he is an endoscopic surgeon and consultant gynecologist. So Department of OPG and VVS Hospital. Then he is vice chairman ICOG 2020, vice president ISOPAB 2020, vice president FOGSI, and president SOGOG, and he has got many accolades to his credit. Sir is a very strict disciplinarian, and sir, I'm very happy that you have joined here to chair this session. Thank you so much. And Dr. Mary, ma'am, she is president Nagarcoil Obstetric and Gynecological Society. She's the president of Rotary Club, and then she has been awarded with many awards. So, madam, she has been a very hard worker and has done lots of work, lots of health camps in adolescent health. So thank you for joining, and thank you.
Thank you, Supriya. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you for coming. And now I'll just hand over to the chairpersons, and I request Dr. Rosa, ma'am, to introduce the speaker.
Sure. Well, at the outset, I want to congratulate both Dr. Supriya and Dr. Kiranmai for joining hands together and working in unity, which is so very important in FOGSI. And both the committees are doing well to come up with such a good CME. I think unity always helps in coming out the best in everyone. So good that you join hands together. And I'm sure that Supriya, you'll do wonderful work in Adolescent Committee. You're doing already, you've started off with such a good start, and you learn and you come up very well doing all the good work that has been done. I need to introduce Shobha, which I'm just waiting to see Of course, this is such an important topic that, as we were discussing before the program had started, first of all, let me congratulate the first speaker, Charmila, who has done such a good work for the reproductive health, sexual reproductive health. You know, things have really changed from 2014 when Government of India had started off with this. And you so beautifully brought about the changes which we are having. And now the challenges are for us to face what we should teach our adolescents. Shobha is going to tell us more about contraception in adolescent, the choice-based approach. We all know what a good work she has done. She's at present the professor head of the Philomenas Hospital, Bangalore, postgraduate teacher examiner. She has been working as the chairperson of the Family Welfare Committee. And I know, Shobha, you've taken out such beautiful CDs and, you know, a lot of educational based things for contraception. I think you'll be the right person to talk about this topic. You've been editor of many books and, you know, having a lot of positions held in Bangalore. I know you've been the past president of Bangalore. I had the honor of being there and doing a workshop when you were the president. So we hand over to you because I think your topic is very important and many would like to hear this. And I'm so happy I'm co-chairing the session with Parul, my dear friend, who's been the past president of Adolescent Committee himself. And of course, Dr. Annie, who I cannot see. Okay, she's here, Marianne. Lovely to have all of you. Please go ahead, Shobha, so that we can all, you know, see what the latest things are in keeping in view what the POXO Act is, which is putting us into a dilemma always.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rosa. A very nice introduction. And I think we all need to feel committed to this cause, otherwise it will not get the focus that it deserves. And I think Charmila set the background for the webinar extremely well. Thank you, Kiran and Supriya, both.
Shobha, you will have to speak up. Your voice is coming.
Little voice has to be, yeah, it's little sounding now. Yeah.
Is it better now?
Better, but some more would be good.
Is it better now?
Keep your mic close.
Is it better now?
It's better, Shobha. Yes. It's better now. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. So thank you, Kiran and Supriya, both dear friends, and they're both standing at the threshold of what I can see a very promising tenure as chairpersons of your respective committees. And I think we are fortunate that they have thought of coming together for such an important cause as adolescent SRHR, because both perspectives are highly integrated and highly, you know, intertwined. And we need to understand adolescent SRHR and violence against adolescents as a kind of, you know, as a twin problem which is presenting to us today. Well, when it comes to adolescent, it will be good if all are reminded of this quote, you know, which I got by Sri Paramhansa Yogananda, that we thank thee that no sin is unforgivable, no evil insuperable, for the world of relativity does not contain absolutes, because there has to be a relativity, a kind of non-judgmental attitude when it comes to adolescent sexual health. So we need to talk about adolescent contraception. We need to speak about the high-risk behavior. We need to talk about the choice-based approach, which we will adopt as we face girls who are sexually active and are in unstable relationships. The fact remains that we do have the largest generation of adolescents in history, about 1.2 billion strong, which is preparing to enter the adulthood in a rapidly changing world. The number must be more now. There needs to be addressed. That is a very big challenge for the country. As I said, 250 to 260 million teenagers in India at present. And this is the target population, maybe almost 300 million to 350 million girls and boys are waiting to have their reproductive health needs met and their sexuality addressed. And actually, they need to be nurtured as individuals at this delicate phase of life. This is a time when everything is happening at once for them: the psychological, emotional growth, educational development, and social maturation. And the effects of physical changes are very overwhelming indeed. When we speak about the dilemmas they face, it is the rebellion for adult control and yet the need for direction. It is the wish for closeness, but yet there is fear of intimacy. They think of future, but actually are very oriented to the present. They are sexually mature, but cognitively not ready to experience sexuality. That is one thing very important to understand, that their perception is of sexuality is not completely, evolved. They feel that sexual experiences are more important, whereas the truth is that they need to have a healthy sense of sexuality integrated into their personality. So adolescent sexuality has a lot of background which determines it. There is a history of abuse which can alter it, the physical health, the maturation, whether it is in time, the impact of digital media, of religious beliefs, of family peer pressure, and the peers' attitude towards sexuality. The girl is always perplexed, is she an adult or a child? And essentially, it means that sexual activity starts before acquiring the knowledge and skills in self-protection. This is what we need to understand, that majority of them are entering into their sexual life before understanding what it is about. So therefore, we have problems specific to teenagers. There's a surge of growth, multiple sequential sexual partners may be there. The physical and emotional immaturity is definitely there. And there may be drug abuse, alcohol, and smoking. And we need, we all understand that these evils are increasing every day in our society. And it is the dimension is much more than what we understand. The unsafe sexual behavior is existing, but do they understand the consequences? That there are unwanted pregnancies, that there are unsafe abortions, they can lead to death. STIs like HIV and AIDS are quite prevalent. RTIs leading to chronic pelvic pain and infertility is poorly understood. And of course, there is that threat of cervical cancer in future life. Do they understand? The truth about teenage contraception, 80% do not use contraception. 50% of teenage pregnancies occurs in the first 6 months of initiating sex. So they are all unprotected. 1/3 of 1 million new HIV cases occur in adolescents. And this is a devastating truth, which may not have reduced at all in the past 2 decades. And when we look at women undergoing abortions, there are more than 5 million women who are less than 20 years of age. Why do they not use contraception? Unexpected, unplanned nature of the activity. There's a lack of information. There is inability to pay for healthcare costs, which is often not understood by us. There is a fear of medical procedures and drugs, etc., fear of judgmental attitudes and resistance from providers. And this is what we need to change. This is in our hands. Embarrassment and fear of lack of confidentiality. Again, this is something that we can change. And we also need to convey to them about the dangers of teenage pregnancy. And this is, of course, more applicable to our country, because still today we are battling with a higher incidence of teenage pregnancy amongst married adolescents in few areas of the country. We need to understand that the teenage pregnancy can have social, medical, maternal, and fetal impact. And we need to convey this to the young girl who is married and is unprotected. Factors during the consent, what do we highlight? We must first develop rapport, must gain the confidence, identify the health and contraceptive needs, identify to them, provide info that with confidentiality, assess competence of the young person, assess the competence, and assess the risk of sexual exploitation or coercion. So we need to find out subtly whether the young girl is at risk for any violence or exploitation. We also need to give them enough time. So we should not squeeze an adolescent girl between high-risk pregnancies and other reproductive health problems. We must give them a separate time in the clinic so that we do not have any distractions and we can talk to them with more attention. There is these problems when we come to choosing a contraceptive. She has to choose depending on the frequency of coitus, the high-risk behavior, cost and availability, and effectiveness. Rational choices can be all choices adapted by adults can be offered to the teenage girl as well. And these are some of them. This is something which I think I have covered. We need to tell them, we need to understand the current scenario of adoption of contraceptive practice in general population. How well are they informed, so that we can outline the information to be given in the short consultation time. We need to put in groundwork based on knowledge derived from our information system, our educational system for professionals, conferences and lectures. The average age of first marriage in our country, we need to understand. So as providers, we need to understand the spectrum of services which are required from us. Now, this is Contraceptive Knowledge, Attitude and Practice Survey, the CAP survey, done by these Indian authors, Srivastava et al. And the objective was to estimate the knowledge and prevalence of contraception among women presenting for voluntary MTP or as septic and incomplete abortions, most of them young women. And it was found that the reduction of unintended pregnancy will require effective programs to delay and reduce the activity, increase use of effective contraception, improve the knowledge about correct use of different contraceptive methods, the accessibility and availability of the services. Well, the question does remain is, whether the adolescent will agree to using the contraceptive, whether we can give good advocacy about each method, and whether she will adopt the method at the end. When the trends in sexual experience, contraceptive use and teenage childbearing has seen several publications, and one of them brought out by Jennifer Manlaw, PhD et al., concluded that there is a recent increase in US teen birth, and it highlighted the continued importance of improving reproductive health outcome. So globally, there is a lot of understanding that adolescents should have a focused reproductive health care clinics and should have programs towards that. This can also mean positive changes in family environments once we put them in place, and positive trends in sexual relationships for the teenagers, and that is possible that parental education will result in better behavior amongst the teens, because the parents are better able to convey and better able to look after their teen children, and then the teen pregnancy rates can come down, and positive trends in sexual relationships, including an increasing age at first sex and reductions in older partners. So the trend of early sexuality can be changed into better understanding of sexuality and higher responsibility at the first sexual encounter. When we speak about intergenerational factors, something which I just now spoke about, parental education, we need to understand that there are stages in this, the association between teen pregnancy and intergenerational factors. Stage 1 is cultural socialization. Stage 2 is exposure to risk factors, social exclusion. Stage 3 is sedimented acceptance of limited life changes, social exclusion, and living a life of social exclusion and transmission of social exclusion. So girls who develop into sexually free individuals do have some kind of exclusion from the society, and they need to have that understanding that they need to have the willpower to consult healthcare, and people like the facilitators in the community can be midwives, can be health visitors and educationalists, which will bring young people into the fold, and we will be able to offer them choice for contraception. Because there is a lot of hesitation for adolescents to approach the healthcare system. We are looking at different choices here, and we need to understand, as I said earlier also, that all methods which can be offered to adults can be offered to young girls as well, including the intrauterine device, including the injectables. And the chart for teens can look something like this. Abstinence also can be advocated to some teens who have had a very early start to sexual life, And surprisingly, it is found that adolescents do adapt abstinence from time to time if advocated well and advised in the correct way, because they do understand the need to break away from relationships in between, and that conserves their reproductive health better. It will, of course, be difficult for those teens who are in coercive and abusive relationships. And as healthcare provider, we need to teach them negotiation skills, and we need to develop counselors who will support and help them consistently. And the effectiveness, of course, is 100% if adhered to correctly and consistently, and she will not become, pregnant unnecessarily. Now, the oral contraception and emergency contraceptives are very good resorts for adolescents, and we see that they have got good compliance if counseled well, and the protection is very, very high. And even for emergency contraception can be provided to all adolescents in case they do not adopt any of the regular methods. And the non-contraceptive advantages of oral contraceptive pills need to be highlighted for them, and they need to be told that some gynecological disorders like endometriosis, premenstrual syndrome, and even PCO will benefit because of COCs, and also the beneficial effect on anemia, better menstrual health can be highlighted. The disadvantages should be kept in mind. Some of them are students, so they cannot look at breakthrough bleeding, headaches, and depression. They need to understand that there will be initial months of use can take them through some breast tenderness. They need to understand that some medical disorders will contraindicate the use of combined oral contraceptive pills, etc. And this nuancing is perfectly possible when the care provider is using a medical eligibility wheel. Okay, so this is a Ripple study and share studies which have been published long back. And, such studies we must keep revisiting to understand that contraceptive method at first sexual intercourse and subsequent pregnancy risk is always, we always know that the risk of pregnancy is highest in the first few months of sexual encounters. And if the contraceptive method is already in place, then the risk of pregnancy can be minimized. The other methods like long-acting contraceptive methods like Norplant, Depo-Provera, and IUCD, well, all three of them are applicable to adolescents as well, and we can prescribe them with a lot of confidence. A case situation analysis of 17-year-old unmarried, delayed cycles, and she comes with her guardian actually. And do we do all this, or we just test the urine and she tests positive for beta-HCG, and she seeks an abortion care and advice regarding contraception? So we do find this situation very often in our day-to-day practice, and then the whole, the Pandora's box gets opened up, that a 17-year-old girl, and what can be done? Can we offer her abortion? Yes, under the POXO Act, we can just inform the local law authority and go ahead, and we need to give effective contraception as well. So the basic clarification for all contraceptive method, we need to find some nuancing for married girls and unmarried, because unmarried may require dual protection more often, and the period of intended use of any particular method should be highlighted. Now, this girl who came to us at 17 years does not just need a one-step counseling, but needs a counseling program where she can come repeatedly to the clinic, and she can be offered ongoing contraception services. In case she has a problem, we can offer her a better solution. So all the LARC methods in adolescents have got very high efficacy, and girls need to understand that. These are some information about barrier contraception in adolescents, and they are all highly efficacious. The only problem is that consistency for using of barrier methods may be slightly less in adolescents, and therefore they need to understand the use of emergency contraceptive as well, always. The second situation analysis is a 19-year-old girl, delayed cycles for a week, and previous were regular. She again tests positive, and she's keen on a medical abortion and use of some form of contraception. How long can she use the contraceptive? And she is a married girl, and she needs to be told about obstetric complications if she becomes pregnant very early. So here a little more information needs to be given to the woman, why it is so very essential to prevent a planned pregnancy. How do clinicians make decisions? In fact, we look for the treatment with the profile best fitting for each patient needs, isn't it? Same technique has to be used in adolescents when we need to fit the product to the situation, fit the contraceptive method to the situation. About emergency contraception, they need to be told very, very early. They need to be told that it can be used at any time during the cycle, though it may not be equally effective at all times of cycle. They need to be told that it does not protect against STDs. They need to be told that there are method options like the ulipristal acetate, the levonorgestrel tablet, the copper IUCD, which also can be used in a teenager as an emergency contraceptive. There is no contraindication for its use. In cases of rape or coerced sex, the medical methods are better. And in cases of where there is absolutely no risk of infection, it's a stable relationship or even a married relationship, copper IUD can be promoted. How best to educate on emergency contraception is something we need to be very smart about. Now, some fear about promoting contraception, especially in the young people, is that does it have the potential to further decrease the rate of unintended teen pregnancy? Definitely, yes. Education and counseling for EC should be part of annual preventive healthcare visit for all teens. Education should address access and accessibility issues also. They need to be told where it is available, and they need to be told that it acts primarily on the ovulatory process, and there is a time limit within which it is effective, and there is it requires a better decision making for the provider and the acceptor. Now, it will definitely be better tolerated than the complete hormonal prescription we give for the entire month. And patients who use emergency contraception should actually come back in a few weeks to accept an ongoing steady method. Okay, but definitely if there is an over-the-counter access for teens, which is well informed to them, it will limit the barriers to access, and then it will improve the use. We need to refute these myths which are linked to adolescent contraception, that abstinence is the only truly effective means to prevent pregnancy and sexual transmitted disease. This in fact is true. Contraceptive distribution encourages teens to have sex. This is very false. It actually protects them. They will be indulging whether we tell them about contraception or not. Contraceptive availability programs send the wrong message to teens. This is very, very wrong. It's an absolute myth. Of course, it sends the right message. The failure rate for barriers is very high, and is what people think. The teens think that failure rate is very high. Then why use it at all? But then we need to always tell them that it has its own huge benefit, and it will never give them a false sense of protection. It will always tell them that the barrier needs to be in place. It is the responsibility of parents, not schools, to inform children about sexuality, which is not correct. It is a combined responsibility. Okay, this is about gynecological symptoms and sexual behaviors amongst adolescent women. And this study sought to expand the minimal understanding of the prevalence of gynec symptoms. Studies like this will improve our understanding, by miles. Gynec symptoms influence the likelihood of sex behaviors, suggesting a complex relationship between the occurrences. And we need to bring this in when we are prescribing contraception. We need to make them feel comfortable. For example, girls who are having very frequent periods can be offered contraceptives which will allow them to have less frequent periods. So also for dysmenorrhea, so also for recurrent infections, etc. So this brings us to the 5 principles of SRHR for adolescents: the equity, quality, accountability, multi-sectorality and meaningful engagement. So it is very evident that family planning at its very inception, at its very beginning in a woman's life, is much more complex than just prescription of a contraceptive pill. The young girls require 6 main platforms for SRHR education. The health services, schools, laws and policies should be conducive. Communities should accept transforming giving them this information. The media and social marketing services should also facilitate this. We are very fortunate that FOGSI is a hugely forward-thinking organization, and it supports the inclusion of age-appropriate sexuality in education from grade 8 through 12th grade. And in fact, this also the part of the central government today as an integral part of comprehensive health education. And FOGSI encourages its members to advocate for and participate in such situations. So this is about comprehensive sexuality education. Some of them, what are the components, how is it run in other countries, how can we do it in India, and what are the barriers and what are the solutions. So we need to have clear evidence that there is a clear evidence that CSE, comprehensive sexuality education, has a positive impact on sexual reproductive health of teens. It reduces STI, it reduces HIV, and of course it reduces unintended pregnancy. Okay, so not bringing on all the points, but we can say that the fight is still on for a fair comprehensive sexuality education, because we cannot discuss everything in such a narrow time frame. To conclude, I will just go through some of the slides very quickly. That counseling for teens for contraception also very much needed for youth is the gather approach, the greet, ask, tell, help, explain, and return visit, very much needed for teens also. This is can be made into a chart and kept in our clinic. The message for dual protection against pregnancy and STD. Dual method use can be a barrier in addition to a steady method, which we always discuss. But in those girls who will refuse this steady method, and believe me, there will be often refusal to use a steady method of contraception. In them, the barrier can be the primary method and EC can be the secondary method, but dual method is a must. There should be a belt and suspender approach. There has to be a double protection for the young girl, and we can choose from all these, the basket of choices. Some of them which are clinician dependent, and some of them are non-clinician dependent. So we need to have enough information and IEC in our clinic in order to give them. And colorful information education communication materials will help us to get across to the teens. We need to finish with one word on POXO. Is it the undoing of good deeds so far? Are you aware of POXO? Most of us are. What is good? What is bad? What is ugly about POXO? We need to understand. Is there any good at all? I believe personally that there is good, because it will protect some of our girls from harm. It will also tell us that there is a best way of informing for MTP contraception for sexually active couples less than 18. We need to become very, very good in this, because they are a very delicate state of mind. Mental health is often unaddressed. So the very fact that POXO exists is not known to our adolescents. Believe me, it is not known. So we need to inform them that it is a crime, it is a punishable offense. Schools are not aware that it exists. Parents are not aware. So we need to. So this is where is our role. Awareness will help. So please go ahead and make people aware about this. So we also have, Ask Tanu initiative, which was the online. So Ask Tanu was a digital initiative to improve knowledge on contraception. Even today, it is there in the, it is a Facebook page, and our teens can go ahead and access it and get some more information. So what are the messages we give them? This is something which Charmila has spoken. I will not take time on this. We have to give them that they have to protect themselves from violence. We need to tell them to tell a trusted adult about abuse. So whenever an adolescent comes seeking contraception, have that fine sense to ask about coercion and ask about abuse. We may not find marks on the body all the time. We may not find evidence of physical evidence assault, but we may be missing that coercion which happens. So please tell them not to remain silent and give them enough confidence to share their problems. They need to understand that my body belongs to me is the mantra we have to give them, and distinguish between safe and unsafe touch. And we have only one life. It is very precious, and they should learn to say no and learn to report. These are important messages to give. So please be very proactive about finding out if an adolescent is being coerced into a relationship. That is very important. It may not always be physically evident. There may even be drug abuse involved in it. So please don't make light of it. All these evils are there all around us, and they need to know about these deadly infections. They need to understand what will protect them. Okay. And some countries have followed the ABC protocol, like Uganda, and there is also a D, which means do it yourself. And they can be encouraged for higher masturbation if that will protect them from bad relationships. Abstinence, be faithful, and condoms, the ABC. SDG 5, which stands for gender equality, brings in sexual reproductive health in a very big way. And we talk about equal access to education, work, politics, political participation, decision making, etc., and also about equal sexual reproductive health rights. They need to understand that to act on impulse is not freedom, and with the freedom for sexuality comes great responsibility to protect their own reproductive health. In fact, SDG 3, 5, and 17 all need to be fulfilled if we want to create very good teenage health, sexual and reproductive health. Awareness, acceptance, avoiding discrimination, avoiding violence, and assuring inclusive environment will take us there to the healthy generation next. Thank you so much for a patient hearing. Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you for your wonderful presentation, madam. Now may I request Dr. Parul sir to give your expert comments.
There is no expertise in here. Okay, I'll just share what I have passed through in the service of adolescents through FOGSI. So Shobha has already covered everything, and I was initially a little bit hesitant that she might not touch upon the medical aspect of contraception, because she was talking a lot about the rights and the other stuff. So it is very vital that we do pass on that message that saying no is okay. See, sometimes they are pressurized into this. So that one sentence is good. Another quip is families that pray together stay together. So sometimes that family environment can make a big difference, and this we can pass on to the community while we are discussing with parents. And we need to also highlight this part, because most teenagers are aware about emergency contraception, but they are not aware of limitations of it, and they keep on using it frequently. So we need to highlight that aspect, that this is a one-off situation and don't use it as on a regular basis. It may harm you. So that is one point we need to highlight more. And I would just share with you just two of my slides, which are very pertinent. And at many presentations, I have done that. And Rosa might be aware of those also. Please look at those. Okay. I hope it is seen.
Yes, sir.
Yes, it's seen, Parul, very well seen.
Okay. So London Rape Council guideline. This was, published in 2000. So very old, but very pertinent even today. Don't go out alone at night. That encourages men. Don't go out alone anytime. Any situation encourages men. Don't stay at home. Intruders and relatives both rape. Don't go without clothes, that encourages men. Don't go with clothes, any cloth encourages some men. Avoid childhood, some rapists are turned on by little girls. Avoid old age, some rapists prefer aged women. Don't have a father, uncle, grandfather, or brother, because these are the relatives that most often rape young women. Don't have neighbors, these often rape. Don't marry, rape is legal within marriage. To be quite sure, don't exist. So this is what we have to pass on, that you can't shut your eyes to sexual abuse. You have to keep your eyes open, find ways and means to protect yourself, and we need to help them identify what are the pointers to the abuse and how they can get out of it. And that should be a big challenge to the Adolescent Health Committee. We were fortunate that we reached almost 16 lakh girls during our session, and subsequently also Rosa continued this. And I hope that the current committee also will be working on that. Problem is that we have little money in adolescent health. But yes, the companies which provide menstrual hygiene, they are ready to help us in this. So I think these two slides just highlight the aspect which we can pass on more effectively to the youngsters. Thank you very much for involving me in this, Supriya.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And may I have some comments from Dr. Mary, ma'am?
Good evening, everybody here. Let me thank Dr. Kiran Mai and Dr. Supriya, who are my friends. And I'm really very happy to be here with Dr. Shobha, Dr. Rosa, and Dr. Parul. And really a very nice occasion to share about many things which has to reach the adolescent. So Dr. Shobha has beautifully narrated the contraception in adolescence, and Dr. Parul sir has also clarified, and he has given a gist of what we have to convey to the younger generation who have to be targeted. Because what I feel is they might be knowing things, but they may not reach us straight. So the awareness has to be created to this generation, and especially socially, we have to give a message to the parents as well as the teachers, so that we can really bring a very harmonious atmosphere and a very safe atmosphere where our children are protected from all the dangers. This is what I think, apart from the messages transferred by the speakers, I think every member of FOGSI can do something regarding this by reaching the schools and colleges and then motivating the children and making them fearless regarding all this. Thank you very much once again to everybody here.
May I make one point here, Dr. Supriya?
Yes, yes.
We conducted a large adolescent health survey involving 40,000 girls. And we also passed, in fact, during that time, 3 statement of policy from FOGSI, one of which Shobha mentioned here. So reproductive rights of adolescent, right to education or knowledge, right to services, and right to access. These were 3 which we passed. So now we should have a survey which can tell us whether it has reached the community. A small survey from rural area also, from urban area also. You can do a large survey also, involve all societies, and see whether these adolescents feel empowered or are they still lacking in these 3 aspects: services, knowledge, and access. Then we can say that in 20 years whether things have changed or not. I have data of that time, so we can compare and see what happened in 20 years. Okay.
Okay.
That's a brilliant idea, Parul. It's a brilliant idea to, because then, you know, we can have some metrics on how we are performing also. You know, that will give us some sense of achievement. If there is a good one, it will guide us where we have not kind of been strong.
And it gives us a feedback also that where we can focus more.
Yes, exactly. I agree with you. And this lecture, I thought a lot about whether I need to speak about the methods. I wanted to bring in, but then speaking about methods to this audience, like it becomes a little trivial because everybody is experienced in contraception prescription. The only thing we need to know is what are the nuances of adolescent care, and that is what they need to understand. And believe me, 90% of the population doesn't know that there is a FOGSI Act. And I'm 100% sure that if our young are very, very clever,
We
they're
have
very
it.
foresighted. And if they know that there is an act, Kiranmai, if they know that there is an act,
yes,
then they will be more responsible. They will know that sexual debut is not okay before 18 in our country. They will accept it. I'm very sure. It only
we
has
have
to be
Dr.
told in the
Manish
right way.
sir stock focusing on FOXO and MTP. Thank you, Shobha ma'am. It was very, very comprehensive. Parul sir, thank you for your wonderful comments and advice and
Thanks, Kiran.
suggestions.
Thank you so much for
Yeah, thank you, Shobha ma'am. And the chairpersons, over to Dr. Kiranmai ma'am for the next session.
Yeah, the next session, the next session is another interesting one, I should say. I was very particular to have this VAW and mental health, and also wanted real experts to be delivering this lecture and taking part in this session. So I had the pleasure of having two esteemed faculty from NIMHANS. So our speaker is Dr. Veena Satyanarayana, and we have our chairperson, Dr. Sundar Nag, who is both additional professors. For this session, let me invite the chairpersons. So Dr. Sundar Nag Ganjekar sir is additional professor of psychiatry at NIMHANS. I have seen him as a TOT. I was one of the trainees at the perinatal mental health training we had as part of our Telangana government's initiative. So that was very, very, innovative, and I really enjoyed that whole training. So the perinatal psychiatry and women's mental health is sir's interest. Thank you, sir, for joining. And we have Dr. Kalpana. Kalpana is, though she's an infertility consultant, I know her, she's very, very dynamic from Madurai. And recently, she has conducted such a mega CA cervix screening camp, leading all the way at around 1,000 people screened from Madurai and Tamil Nadu societies. She's Secretary MOG, she's South Zone Coordinator for Endometriosis Committee, and so many things are there, so many awards are there. Welcome, Dr. Kalpana. And then we have another very dynamic person and a dear friend, Dr. Jyoti Banglawala, who is the Vice President of Indore Obs and Gynae Society. She's interested in ethical and medical legal aspects of OB-GYN, and she has so many things to her credit. I'll not go through the entire things, but she has been a core member and curriculum developer for the prestigious, we all are part of the Dhira team. So we were work together in Dhira. Welcome all the chairpersons. I would request Dr. Kalpana to introduce Dr. Veena, and then the rest of the two chairpersons can give their expert comments at the end of the lecture. We are running late. Sorry about that. Yeah, Dr. Kalpana.
Thank you, Dr. Kiranmai, for a nice introduction. First of all, I should thank Adolescent Committee Chairperson, Dr. Supriya, and Chairperson Violence Against Women, Dr. Kiranmai, for giving me this wonderful opportunity. Violence against women need not be always physical, sometimes sexual, sometimes financial, sometimes domestic violence is also quite common. And what we see is only tip of the iceberg. So we need to address the mental trauma the patient goes on. So we have a wonderful speaker for that, Dr. Veena Satyanarayana. Madam is additional professor, Department of Clinical Psychology at the National Institute of Mental Health and Neuroscience in Bangalore. She has got vast experience in individual, couples, and family psychotherapy in treating mental health concerns in adolescents and adult population too. Worked on several prestigious national and international research grants on gender, violence against women, and mental health in leadership position. And she has published various papers, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kalpana. Very good evening to all of you. It's a great pleasure to be part of this group to speak to you this evening on violence against women and mental health. I'm just trying to share my screen. Yeah. So I just want to say that I guess the earlier two speakers have really set the stage for further discussion on violence against women. I have no conflict of interest to disclose. At the start of my presentation, I thought it's a good idea for us to understand the different acts of violence that can be subsumed under what we call violence against women and girls. So as you can see, this takes many different forms, including domestic violence, and domestic violence is also used synonymously with family violence. Sexual assault and harassment, child abuse, early and forced marriage, sex trafficking, honor crimes, and also female genital mutilation. I've mentioned about intimate partner violence separately. This is because this is also known to be one of the most prevalent forms of violence, including our National Family Health Survey 5, which is the most recent one, indicated that about 30% of women between the ages 18 and 49 years have reported acts of physical as well as sexual violence that was assessed. What is also disturbing about the findings from the NFHS is that a lot of women from the southern states have condoned or justified violence, which is quite a disturbing fact. IPV is violence perpetrated by a current or previous intimate partner. This could again be of different types. Physical and sexual violence is most studied in research because it's easier to operationalize. It's also easier to assess. It's easier for people who have experienced violence to report physical and sexual violence, whereas psychological harm, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, depict a lot of gray areas. It's not very easily operationally defined. It's harder to identify. It's also harder for people experiencing these forms of violence to come out and say that they're actually acts of abuse and violence. Very recently, what is also subsumed under psychological harm is behaviors that indicate controlling behavior, coercion, stalking, financial abuse, and so on. We also know that specific groups of women become more vulnerable for experiencing violence, and these could be migrants, it could be women who are compromised in many ways, either due to illness or disability, both intellectual disability as well as physical disabilities, women living in institutions chronically, women with severe mental illnesses. All of these women are more likely to experience violence. I've also devoted a separate slide for psychological violence and controlling behaviors. Like Dr. Shobha Gudi was telling us, not all violence manifests as marks or injuries or bruises. Sometimes these forms of violence is harder to identify, but this can have just as much consequence in terms of one's mental health. So the different acts of psychological violence may include recurring criticism, verbal aggression, jealousy, threats to end one's relationship with a person, hostile withdrawal of affection, and so on. Whereas when we look at controlling behaviors, a lot of times people do report that their partner isolates them from their own family, friends, and their support networks, limits access to money. They conduct a strict surveillance of their everyday chores and tasks, including, what could be seen as a very mundane activity like grocery shopping, intercepts their emails, calls, texts, threatens to harm children, pets, or any of their cherished possessions, and also monitors very closely their computer, phones, etc. So like everything, there are risk and protective factors when we talk about violence. Some of the risk factors We know that in the clinic, if we find that the lady's husband has problem drinking or heavy drinking, is addicted to substances, it is automatically a red flag for us to look for violence. Similarly, lack of a support system, increased dependency on spouse, illness, disability, pregnancy being a particularly vulnerable time for the lady, also raised in a family where violence is considered to be normal, is condoned. Women who have low self-esteem and which makes them justify violence as being acceptable, all of these could be risk factors for violence and for women to continue staying in abusive relationships. Protective factors could include women's own resilience. It could also be the fact that they have a lot of family support. They don't feel shame and guilt. They don't need to really hesitate disclosing that violence has occurred because they know that people around them will handle it sensitively. So all of these could actually be protective factors. So we know that intimate partner violence is taking the form of a pandemic. 1 in 3 women throughout the world, WHO says, will experience physical and or sexual violence by a partner or sexual violence by a non-partner. And if you look at the distribution across different regions of the world, we see that there are higher rates of violence in Southeast Asian region, so also in the Mediterranean region, African region, and so on. So when we look at the health impacts of violence, this takes us through the life cycle of violence against women. The inner circle talks about the range of health effects that this can potentially have across the lifespan of a woman, starting from pre-birth, where there could be sex-selective abortion, infancy, where there could be infanticide, childhood, where there could be malnutrition, female genital mutilation, child abuse, adolescence, where there could be prostitution, trafficking, early marriage, psychological abuse, rape, and so on. During the reproductive age, again, we see a lot of dowry killings, intimate partner violence, homicide, sex work, and so on. And this does not stop even in the phase of one becoming old, where there could be elderly abuse as well. The health effects are also, is quite a long list, starting from infant and child mortality to various kinds of physical health and mental health consequences, injuries, complications during pregnancy, going on to sexually transmitted infections, HIV, and so on. When we look at the mental health continuum, you have mental health and wellness on the one hand. On the other end, you have mental illness. But a lot of women lie in between who experience a lot of subjective distress. They have a lot of psychological issues, which may not always take the form of a diagnosable psychiatric or a mental health condition. So these women could have difficulties with their confidence levels. They could experience anxiety, which is sub-threshold, sub-syndromal anxiety. They could experience a lot of dysfunction in their social relationships. They could have difficulty trusting people, forming relationships, sustaining healthy relationships, engage in high-risk behaviors, and so on. But of course, again, a significant proportion of people who experience violence do develop mental health difficulties of different types, and I'll come to that a little later. When we look at assessment of mental health, it's very important to appreciate this bidirectional relationship. Intimate partner violence or exposure to any violence of a traumatic nature increases the risk of developing mental health problems. So also mental health problems increase the risk of these women becoming exposed to violence of various types. And when we say mental health assessment is necessary, it is not with the intention of pathologizing or labeling the woman. We do appreciate the fact that anybody who experiences a traumatic event, it's quite natural for them to have emotional problems as a consequence. Some of them are affected more acutely, some of them have more lasting consequences and long-term ramifications of exposure to violence on their health. We also know that women are less able to protect themselves and take care of their interests if they're mentally not sound or if they're mentally disturbed. So when we look at the mental health impact and the different psychiatric conditions that women can become vulnerable to, this is again a long list. We talk about post-traumatic stress disorder or even complex PTSD, where one lady experiences multiple traumatic events across their life cycle stage, like we saw in the earlier graphic. Women do increasingly become vulnerable for depression and anxiety disorders, sexual difficulties, sleep and eating disorders, suicide, and sometimes engage in non-suicidal self-harm behaviors, experience chronic pain, somatization, and in fewer cases, they also become vulnerable to severe mental illnesses such as psychosis. I also spoke about engaging in risky behaviors that could take the form of risky substance abuse behaviors or sexual behaviors, which could again make them vulnerable for several other health consequences. This slide talks about increased prevalence and odds of domestic violence abuse, as well as sexual assault among people with severe mental illnesses. And here you can see that women are disproportionately affected compared to male participants. Another systematic review of psychiatric patients, both inpatients and outpatients, indicated that approximately 1/3 of women had a lifetime history of intimate partner violence. And sadly, this was often unrecognized by healthcare providers. Another synthesis of 41 studies looked at women with depressive disorders having higher odds for intimate partner violence. Similar was the case for anxiety. Similar was the case for anxiety disorders as well as PTSD, compared to women who did not have a mental health condition. So the bidirectional relationship that I spoke about earlier has been demonstrated in both of these meta-analytic studies. Intimate partner violence in the perinatal period, I thought, would be of interest to this audience. And again, when we look at the prevalence rates of this, we can see that the prevalence is significantly high in countries like Latin America and at the lower end of the table, Peru, Egypt, Africa, as well as India. So when we look at pregnancy outcomes, there is a greater report of unintended pregnancies, which occurs in the context of partner violence. We also have higher rates of abortion that is reported, and also a lot of women terminated pregnancy when exposed to violence compared to women who did not have any experience of violence. We also have studies reporting a range of maternal effects. I already spoke about depression, PTSD, rates of these to be high. So also low self-esteem, anxiety, substance use difficulties, and so on. These women sought inadequate antenatal care, which becomes very, very significant and which could have repercussions on the infant mental health as well, or child mental health as well. They do report a wide range of physical health sequelae, including STIs and HIV. And another study which really looked at pregnancy-related homicides found that 54% were related to intimate partner violence. So also when we look at fetal effects, we find that there is higher risk of IUGR, low birth weight, preterm births, fourfold increase in having a small for gestational age neonate, preterm birth and low birth weight, higher odds of this in women exposed to violence, So also neonatal mortality that was reported more in lower and middle income countries. So in terms of postpartum effects, we know that IPV is significantly associated with depression symptom severity, not just the fact that they could, meet criteria for depression, but also the severity of symptoms were high. Perinatal depression, anxiety, and PTSD were also significantly associated with domestic violence. So this slide again talks about the relationship between IPV and incident depression. And the lower end of the table talks about depression and incident IPV, again to demonstrate the bidirectional relationship that I mentioned. So all perinatal mental health disorders associated with domestic violence and abuse, we found that there were increased odds of depression post-IPV, and having depression also made people vulnerable for developing IPV. So exposure to violence became a significant risk factor. So when we look at violence during pregnancy, again, you have fatal outcomes such as homicide and suicide, and non-fatal outcomes, which include a host of negative health behaviors, reproductive health difficulties, mental and physical health difficulties that women experience. So what are some of the indicators that IPV could be happening during pregnancy? So we have found in our own clinic that these women have poor gestational weight gain. They miss a lot of prenatal appointments. Their antenatal health utilization seems poor. Poor healthcare behaviors, and also in Western countries, substance use is significantly reported. In our country, we've also seen rates of prescription drug misuse or abuse. So in terms of case identification, it is often recommended that there are facilities and services that encourage safety planning for these women who are experiencing violence. Screening alone is not recommended if it does not at least follow a mandate of offering at least a first response to the survivors experiencing violence for ethical reasons. A lot of research favors routine or case-based inquiry for IPV during antenatal care, but this is a debatable issue because we also need to know if somebody reports violence, what do we do about it? And that also becomes very important. Having systems for referral and safety planning, like I mentioned, private, safe, and confidential environment. If there are physical injuries, maybe that warrants more specific questions and examination. If serious violence is reported, one needs to assess, is it really safe for this lady to be going back home where, one does not feel safe and, she experiences violence in that context. If danger exists, then immediate referral to appropriate agencies and shelters becomes important. Recently in NIMHANS, we undertook a project called Stri Manuraksha. This was about system strengthening, where we developed the capacity of all one-stop centers throughout India to provide first response to women facing violence. We did this training virtually across all one-stop centers, and we've trained thousands of counselors and staff of these one-stop centers to provide these services to women experiencing different types of gender-based violence. So similarly, we need adequate systems and system strengthening because once we screen, once we identify, we need to refer them. And if they are not handled sensitively when we refer them, there are higher rates of re-victimization that gets reported, which makes mental health consequences far worse. So do women accept routine inquiry of IPV in the antenatal period? In our experience, yes, if it is done with adequate privacy, confidentiality, My colleagues earlier spoke about empathy and non-judgmental attitude, explaining to them why asking about violence and talking about it is important, because they may not be making that connection between exposure to violence and the kind of symptoms that they are experiencing, and it's important to educate them about it. To not press the lady to leave the partner, because we know that this is quite complex in our culture and she may never come back if we take that stance that she shouldn't go back at all and she should consider leaving her spouse. So that needs to be her decision and we need to facilitate it over a few visits. Disclosure leads to at least some positive consequences. At least she feels she got a space to talk about it. There may not be immediate solutions, but she, experienced the fact that her first disclosure was handled sensitively. She was still respected. She still was given the dignity that she deserves, and so on. That experience itself can be quite therapeutic for women. So in terms of handling mental health consequences, again, a host of psychotherapeutic techniques along with, or sometimes pharmacotherapy alone could be the way forward. Risks and benefits often are discussed when pharmacotherapy is used, particularly during pregnancy and postpartum. Safety counseling is always part of the package because it's very important that they are debriefed about how they can stay safe and how they can still watch out for their safety in this environment, which could be potentially abusive. Accessing social support when needed, to have a few numbers on speed dial, to sensitize one family member about their situation, all of that becomes important in safety planning. There is specialized intervention that is available for survivors of trauma, including these acts of violence, and those are trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapies and other psychotherapies which are trauma-informed. So this is a very interesting slide published in British Journal of Psychiatry, which talks about barriers to domestic violence and abuse disclosure by service users. And these were service users that were presenting for mental health difficulties. And we see how there were a host of barriers that they experienced. One is not realizing that this is abuse, putting this at the back of their mind, importance sometimes of issues like gender, culture, whether this will make violence worse, fearing consequences, fearing disruption to family, fear of social service involvement, which will take away their child. So we can see here that these are sometimes very real barriers, and this is important to address. And it's only when these barriers are addressed that women are going to be more forthcoming about talking about their concerns. And this would even be self-blame. They may think that the clinician will also blame them, have a lot of blaming attitudes that they've experienced from their family, shame and embarrassment, distress, and so on. So as a parallel to this, this slide talks about barriers to domestic violence and abuse inquiry by mental health professionals. And I think that this could be relevant to all health professionals. And so I'm putting it up here, and this could be personal discomfort with the topic. One is not comfortable asking about it and one does not know how to handle it. So I don't feel confident about opening up this Pandora's box when I don't know what to do with it. Lack of confidence in approaching the subject, too complex an issue for me to address. They think inquiry is not part of their role, that they should be looking or focusing more on symptoms. They feel that there's no overt indication of violence, and so there is no need to ask for it. Importance, again, of engagement between client and professional, limited opportunity for inquiry. They're busy, there's very little time So they don't want to get into complex matters such as this. And sometimes there could be fear of re-traumatization or fear of offending that could stop professionals from asking about violence. However, when IPV is disclosed or any violence is disclosed, it's very important for health professionals to have a very affirmative stance that violence is indeed unacceptable under any circumstances, and everyone deserves to feel safe and feel safe at home. It's important to validate their distress, that anybody in their position is likely to, feel sad or feel anxious or feel angry or have mixed emotions. To support, to say that, there are things that we can discuss that can potentially help them, ask about safety and do some safety planning as needed. We have to be careful to not make any critical remarks such as saying, why don't you just leave? Respect the individual's concerns and decisions, understand that they may not be in a position to take decisions, and that also requires them to experience some amount of relief from their mental health difficulties. No local legislation and services do extensive resource mapping to know where you can refer these people to, and refer appropriately and document carefully. We've been hearing about FOGSI and various other, laws. And so it's very important to also ensure that our documentation is done carefully. Just one slide on mental health of perpetrators. We know that several times people inflicting violence could also have their own set of challenges. Sometimes they are exposed to violence or abuse as a child. They've grown up witnessing violence in the household or in their neighborhood. They've grown up believing that violence is okay, and it's okay for men to demonstrate their aggression in these ways. They could have genuine difficulties with anger management, impulsivity. They could have a personality disorder, which makes them very suspicious sometimes. They could have substance use disorders of different types. They could be depressed, they could be anxious. They could also have a more severe mental illness like psychosis. They could be delusional. ADHD is another condition which enhances impulsivity. And in very few cases, there has also been instances of more organic manifestations, such as dementia. So I want to end with this slide, which is a very, very useful approach to first response to people who report violence. And this is how health providers can support women who have experienced violence. WHO has widely disseminated this, and it's very easy to practice. It's called the LIVES model or the LIVES approach. L stands for listen closely with empathy and without any judgment. I for inquire about their needs and concerns, give them an opportunity to share and discuss and talk about it. Validate their experiences, show that you believe, that you care genuinely, and that you understand. Enhance their safety, that becomes paramount, both physical safety as well as feeling psychologically safe, and support them to connect with additional services. So this is basically LIVES approach. And although I've discussed very extensively about the magnitude of this problem, I also want to share that violence can be easily prevented. So that's the good thing. And with multiple stakeholders being involved and working in a concerted way, we can achieve definitely a safer world. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Veena. Wonderful, new concepts. Though as part of DIRA, I can say that we have incorporated this UN UNICEF Lives module in one of our modules, but definitely a lot of new inputs from your perspective. Sir, Sundarnak sir, can we have your comments, and then Dr. Jyoti also?
Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So what Dr. Veena tried to focus is that mental health is an important aspect when we talk about sexual and reproductive health. If there is any event which disturbs the sexual and reproductive health of a woman, so whatever may be her life stage, whether she is in the adolescent or adult or old age, then there are chances that there can be a mental health consequences which can range from just a mental distress to mental health disorders, and and these can have a kind of transgenerational effect. So it is important to address mental health consequences when women face any kind of violence. And as told by my earlier speakers, so all stakeholders, like say, especially for teachers who come in contact with women, should needs to be sensitized about mental health consequences, and we need to address. Otherwise, we these they can have a kind of transgenerational effect. So it's indeed a very important area. Thank you, madam. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Dr. Jyoti?
Yes. And first of all, I want to extend my thanks to Dr. Kiranmai and Dr. Supriya Jaiswal for this wonderful UDAAN webinar. And I know this topic is very close to Kiranmai and Dr. Supriya. And just one thing I want to add, this is a very big problem nowadays, and we gynecologists must hold the hand of the mental health professional just to identify this problem. Most of the time we fail to identify this problem. The patient comes with the bruises on, as Shobha madam said, bruises on her body, but we can't see the bruises on her mind or her soul. And we have to identify these females with the tortured soul, and we have to respond them accordingly. Sometimes we fail to identify these patients, and most of the time the child sexual abuse, the child who has been abused sexually in childhood, and the intimate partner violence victims, they come to the infertility clinics, and after 2 or 3 months we came to know why this infertility. There is not the infertility in the reports, but they are fearful about their sex relation with the husband due to the childhood abuse, and sometimes the intimate partner violence due to infertility, and sometimes there is a other reason and the partner is doing violence, and it results in the infertility.
Bidirectional, as Dr. Veena
Many
said.
times we saw in the infertility couple this problem happens. So the main object should be to give the mental health support, and sometimes I feel we fail in this particular field, and we just give her some first aid to her bruises and first aid to her assaults, and we fail to understand what she needs. And there comes the role of the mental health professional. And thank you, Veena madam, for a very nice elaborative talk. Thank you.
Can I just take few seconds?
Yes, Shobha ma'am.
Yeah. Kiran, see, I think very well brought out points by Dr. Veena. Thank you for being here, Veena. We are in the same city and we are connecting through the laptop.
Yes,
So,
yes.
see, I wanted to put in one word about us being sensitive about intimate partner violence, and to understand that the problem waxes and wanes inside the tight ring which is created between the perpetrator and the victimized, okay, the victim and the perpetrator. It's a very tight ring of confidence which you need to break, because in between they become very all right. The relationship becomes quite okay, because that is the nature of IPV. The person who is inflicting it kinds of nurtures a good relationship in between, so that again the victim is in a position to be abused, to be subjected to violence. So we need to break that circle of tight confidence ring which the perpetrator develops for the victim, and because she will remain inside, because she will be looking forward to that moments of respite and those few days of happiness in between those grueling hours of violence. So we need to
Yes.
understand that. And it is a very vicious circle. We need to identify it in our women. So in between, when they come for a follow-up, they may have a different story, They may say, now that problem is not there. You just treat this infection. But then the next time around, it's again the same story. So therefore, we need to be very sensitive about this. And I think what is required in our clinical service, Kiran, is the presence of an expert counselor, somebody who has been trained by people like Dr. Veena. And that is what we lack.
Multidisciplinary approach
Exactly,
again.
exactly.
Actually, we
Thank
have
you,
to take
Shubha.
help of mental health professional just to lead a good treatment response. Sometimes we give treatment, and if patient is having some mental disorder due to this post-traumatic stress, she will not take treatment, or her husband will not give the treatment, or the family will not provide the treatment. So as Shobha madam said, we have to break the chain by identifying the main reason for this mental disorder, what is happening to this particular female. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Over to you, Supriya. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the wonderful session. Thank you, Dr. Veena, Dr. Jyoti, and Dr. Sundar Nag sir, and all of you. So with the last session, we have the speaker, much awaited to hear, Dr. Manish Majave. He is the Chairperson, Ethics and Medical Legal Committee, FOGSI. And to chair the session, we have Dr. Supriya Arwari, Dr. Yogini, and Dr. Gauri. So Dr. Supriya Arwari, she is actually the Supriya Square at present, and she is consultant obstetrician, gynecologist, and infertility specialist. She is the national coordinator of Adolescent Health Committee, FOGSI, for this year. She has got many accolades. She is a chairperson of AMOX, ex-chairperson of AMOX Adolescent Health Committee, joint secretary of Thane Obstetric and Gynecological Society. She has been faculty in many national and international webinars and conferences. So I welcome you, Dr. Supriya Arwari, to be here.
Thank you so much.
And she's a great convener, comparer, and a lovely human being.
Thank you, dear.
And Dr. Gauri Karandikar, she is Director, Karandikar Hospital, Director, Growing Up Clinic, then President-elect, Nasik OBGY Society, National Trainer, Adolescent Friendly Health Services, FOGSI and WHO, Master Trainer of Dhira Initiative for Violence Against Women, FOGSI and UNICEF, Member, Adolescent Health Committee, FOGSI, International, and she has got many accolades to her credit. Welcome, Dr. Gauri.
Hi, Supriya. Thank you.
Dr. Yogini Rolekar, she is the founder, member, and past president of Valsad OBGY Society, active member of Adolescent Health Committee, FOGSI. She has been awarded with maximum female and adolescent awareness activities. So over to you, and welcome all of you. Over to you, and I request Dr. Supriya Arwari to kindly introduce the speaker.
Sure.
And thank you, Manish, sir, for coming.
At the outset, I would like to thank our dynamic president, Dr. Rishikesh Pai, and the two dynamic chairs who are convening today, Dr. Kiranmai and Supriya Square, who are also very dear friends. And Yogini has sent her regrets. She is in the middle of an emergency, so she will probably not be able to join. And it is such a pleasant task to introduce not only a medical legal expert, but a very dear friend, a very sweet person, and always, just a phone call away for any help. But before I begin the introduction, you know that I cannot stop myself from giving some shairi. So this shairi is particularly dedicated to all the gynecologists. कि वक्त ने सबके हिस्से में दुख बांटे हैं, वक्त ने सबके हिस्से में दुख बांटे हैं, इसलिए घड़ी में फूल नहीं काटे, इसलिए घड़ी में फूल नहीं काटे हैं. कुछ इस तरह से सौदा किया गायनेकोलॉजिस्ट के साथ वक्त ने, कुछ इस तरह से सौदा किया गायनेकोलॉजिस्ट के साथ वक्त ने, तजुर्बा देकर दिल का चैन में घाटे दिए. सो गायनेकोलॉजिस्ट को इतने अच्छे एक्सपीरियंसेस मिलते हैं. वी आर एट द रिसीविंग एंड ऑफ सो मेनी ब्लेसिंग्स, but we are also at the receiving end of some of the worst medical legal circumstances that can be faced by any of the medical fraternities. And one such circumstance is unfortunately minor patients MTP. And to enlighten us on this, we have a speaker of no less competence than Dr. Manish Vachve. And To introduce him, he has given in wonderful 3 lines. Okay, he is a gynecological endoscopic surgeon from Pune, chairperson of the Ethics and Medical Legal Committee FOGSI, managing committee member of IAG, and also founder, member of the Pune IAG branch, and always a crusader for doctors, of doctors, and by doctors. I think, Manish, that really nails what exactly you are. And without much ado, over to you for your presentation. I'm sure everybody is eagerly waiting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, everybody. At the outset, I have to thank Dr. Pai sir, Foxy, Dr. Supriya ma'am, Dr. Kiranmay ma'am for arranging this wonderful program and allowing me to share my few thoughts. And thank you, ma'am, for that super introduction. Your आपकी शायरी तो हमेशा 4 चांद लगा ही देती है. And hi, Gauri, everybody. I'll just share my screen. Yeah. So can you see?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I have put it on presentation mode. All right. Okay, so good evening, everybody. I pray to Lord Ganesha to sail me through this presentation. Thank you for involving me. Fantastic topics. I was hearing, so much work is being done and so much still needs to be done in this field of violence against women and adolescent health. So this is me. Thank you for the kind introduction. Salute to all of you. MTP in a minor. So this is something, which is very, very, very common now. Because if you see adolescents, because they are exposed to social media, they would definitely go in and do a lot of things which maybe 10 or 15 years ago was not so much common. And also know that they can get MTP done. So MTP in a minor, from the perspective of the doctors, from the perspective of legality, is what I would discuss now. So this is what is the situation of a doctor in front of whom, a gynecologist in front of whom, if somebody is a minor and says MTP karo, that gynecologist starts to look here and there, and because they don't know, they want to find out the correct information. And for the correct information, they may land up at any place. Of course, like what is shown in the photograph. So we all know that MTP 1971 came into force after the report of Shantilal Shah Commission, which said that there were so many unwanted pregnancies, plus unsafe abortions were almost 90%, and that caused a lot of morbidity and mortality, especially in young girls. So we all know about this Shantilal Shah Commission. Now, important point number one, which we have to also realize, that in India today, if you follow the Indian Penal Code, causing a pregnant woman to miscarry is a crime. So if you read sections 312 to 316 of Indian Penal Code, they say you cannot abort a patient in India, and imprisonment is 3 to 10 years. And your MTP Act is the only umbrella that saves you, which means that if you follow the MTP Act properly, completely, and to the core, you will not attract section 312 to 316. So now we look at the MTP Act as a protective umbrella, and this protection is given to the medical practitioners from consequences of IPC, which also means that if you do not follow the MTP Act properly, you attract sections 312 to 316, and then there are a lot of issues, and they are cognizable, non-bailable, a serious kind of offenses. Now, but it is, this legal protection is only available if you follow each and everything. So it is conditional to every requirement of the act. So that is something very, very, very important, which we have to know. And we all also know that the MTP Act, there are requisites for center registration, which you have to do only once. There is no provision for renewal, etc. The doctor has to be qualified. The patient has to have indications. Now, according to the new act, we all also know, just to reiterate, that up to 20 weeks now, only one RMP can sign. 20 to 24 weeks, there are 7 other indications, a different kind of form you have to fill. 2 RMPs need to be signed. Beyond 24 weeks, only rape victims can undergo MTP. And that also they have to go and take permission from the Government Medical College Committee that is constituted. And maintenance of records, again, is something which we know. Now, let's come to our point of discussion today. A girl is pregnant in front of you. She or her parents want MTP. She is less than 18 years or was less than 18 years on the day of fruitful intercourse. Now, this last sentence is very, very important, because the girl may be, more than 18 years just now while she is in front of you. She may have attained 18 years of age 1 month back, but the pregnancy is 2.5 months, 13 or 14 weeks, which means that you have to try and find out what was her last menstrual period. Point number one. and also try and find out whether during the fruitful intercourse when she missed her menses, at that point in time, if she was less than 18 years. And this is very important, and please keep this in mind. And we have to know this because the crux of the matter for a minor MTP. So there are clinical issues. Obviously, you will have difficulty, procedural difficulty, the chances of perforation, infection, and so on and so forth. I'm not including that in my talk today. The crux of the matter with respect to minor undergoing an MTP is something known as Prevention of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2012 or POXO Act. So we are supposed to know this completely, thoroughly and properly, because this act is there since 2012. So it's not something which is new, and we have to know it from point of view of so many things. So I said this is Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2012. What should we know about this act is our role, compulsory reporting, examination of victim, and if there are any controversies in this act, etc. Now, it is very significant if you see these statistics. 1 out of every 10 women reported some kind of child sexual abuse during childhood. 1 out of 4 girls is sexually abused before the age of 4. 19% are abused between ages 4 and 8, and almost 35% are abused between the ages of around 12. So, these are alarming statistics. 2 million child commercial sex workers are there, who are between 15 and 18 years. 80% of them are found in metros, and 5 lakh children are forced into this trade every year. Now, why I'm making this background is that this is the reason why the Prevention of Children from Sexual Offences Act came up. There are provisions of sexual crime, etc. in IPC. For example, there is rape, there is kidnapping, there is molestation, sexual harassment. So if this is there in IPC, why there should be another act? So the existing laws are not enough to address sexual offense. Now, very important is the POXO Act is applicable to male and females both, right? So IPC will only have, the perpetrator being a male and the victim being a female. Here, it is available to males also. They provide protection to all children from sexual assault, sexual harassment. Now, this second sentence is very important. Everybody who's less than 18 years is a child. So please remember, less than 18 years, pregnancy means 100% you have to report to the police, which comes under the Prevention of Children from Sexual Offences Act. So it was published in 2012. It is known as the POXO Act and not the POSCO Act. So please know these terms correctly. The salient features are it gives offences, special courts, special public prosecutor, there's mandatory reporting and punishment for false reporting, special procedures, recording of complaint, etc. And it is in conjunction with the Juvenile Justice Act, and there is provision for compensation also. I already told you that the POXO Act is gender neutral, so it is applicable to boys and girls both, and it is in addition to the Juvenile Justice Act. Now, there are various sections which give punishments in this act about penetrative sexual assault, aggravated, etc. We'll not go into that. We'll skip these sections. Even if you use child for pornographic purposes, I've seen so many WhatsApp people who are using this child pornography. All that comes under POXO Act, and please delete all this. And I keep on talking to adolescents who follow all these websites and download these videos and exchange. But this is very serious offense, and it will attract the POXO Act. Again, abatement is same gravity as attempt to do this kind of crimes, and attempt to commit an offense is penalized for up to half the punishment. So this is very strict and very stringent act. Now, this is point number one, which is very important for us to know. Whenever you have a minor in front of you and who's asking for an MTP, you have to mandatorily report it to the police. Now, there is no juvenile justice, juvenile police separate, etc. You have to go and report it to the nearest police station, and it is compulsory to report under section 19(1), because it's section 19(1) says anybody who has apprehension or knowledge about any sexual activity for male or female less than 18 years has to mandatorily report. So you have to mandatorily report. So how are you going to report? You will write down the patient's name, her address, her contact number if available, and that she is so and so weeks pregnant and this is her date of birth. Put a copy of the POXO Act with it. Put a copy of her, maybe if she has a Aadhaar card or birth certificate with it and give it to the nearest police station. Take an acknowledgement. Right? If you see section 91 says anybody who has apprehension that an offense under the act is like or knowledge. So if you have a patient who is minor and pregnant, you have a knowledge that see, this comes under FOGSI Act. Failure to report commission of, and when you report all this, you please see to it that you take an acknowledgement that you have reported this kind of thing to the police. Now the police may want products of conception, so they will give you notice for products of conception. That's point number 2. Point number 3, you have to take signature of guardians, local guardian. Please do not take signature of boyfriend, etc., because he's less than 18 as per MTP Act. He's incapable of giving consent. So local guardians, mother or father or elder brother or sister who are related to that patient can give consent for MTP, and then you can do MTP. Now, if the police wants products of conception, you tell the police that you can give them. Always put the products of conception in normal saline or distilled water. Never put them in formalin. If you put the products in formalin, the formalin will see that the cells are all gone. You will never be able to extract DNA from the formalin bulb. A false complaint against any person with malicious intent is punishable. So false complaint against a child is also punishable. So this also we should know. Media should not disclose the identity of such child. So there are so many things there. Identity includes name, address, photographs. Punishment can also be there up to 6 months for media. Child-friendly procedures have to be adopted in order to treat the child if there is sexual abuse and there are injuries. With respect to treating the child, giving emotional support, caring and giving treatment to her wound, etc. Whenever possible, recording by audio, video, electronic means should be done, and at least presence of one of the parents or both the parents is mandatory. Now, what happens if the police are not taking complaint? You go to a senior police officer and ask them to take your information as an acknowledgement. Take it from them, or if they are also not listening, please go to the nearest magistrate and tell the magistrate that police are not taking this complaint, because it is now at least last 6 months or for 5-6 months I have seen police know about this act. 1 year ago nobody knew and they were not taking any cognizance of what you are telling them. But please remember that it is your duty to tell them. If you do not tell them, then there is provision of imprisonment, and this being a cognizable non-bailable offense, the doctor can be arrested without any warrant and may not get regular bail, and this is what generally happens. So be very careful about MTP in a minor patient. Role of media, this I have already discussed. This is important. So you have to treat the patient whenever a sexual victim patient comes to you. You have to treat the patient other than doing MTP also with respect to treatment for cuts, treatment to exposure to sexual transmitted diseases. See that HIV infection is not involved. Get her tested. Get a pregnancy test done. If pregnancy test is negative, offer emergency contraceptives, and referral to a consultation for mental or psychological health of the victim should also be done. Of course, you have to collect forensic evidence. So now Annexure 1 and Annexure 2, Government of India have given guidelines as to how to collect forensic evidence. And please go through those guidelines, downloadable from web, and use those guidelines. It's a first Annexure 1 is telling you all the description about how to collect evidence, and Annexure 2 has lot of figures which you have to fill and complete the evidence. So it is a general neutral act. Attempt is punishable, as I already told you. Mandatory reporting is very, very, very important. And penalty for default in reporting is imprisonment. Examination and treatment of victim, Annexure 1, Annexure 2, Government of India guidelines are there. Controversies are, according to me, only two. One is the females, the victims or the girls' relatives will tell you, why do you want to complain when we don't want to complain? That's point number 1. So please explain to them that it is mandatory for you to complain. And if you do not inform the police, if your information is not given, then you may be arrested as a doctor. So please tell them this is controversy number 1. So how do you solve this controversy if they're not listening? Please call the police to your hospital, go to another room, call the police, and once the police come, you give the information. And then what happens is, when the police make an FIR, the FIR's informant name would be the parents or the guardian who has brought that girl. So this is problem number 1, which we face. Problem number 2, especially in rural areas, I get a lot of phone calls saying that the couple is married and the girl is 17 years. Now, please understand that marriageable age is for girls is more than 18 years. So if somebody is married and 17, that marriage is null and void. So you have to inform, right? So they would say, and these girls would come for delivery. Even if they come for delivery, you have to inform. If they come for MTP, you have to inform. If they come and you do a pregnancy test, you have to inform. So this is the controversy number 2. What is to be done if they say they will show, they'll tell, we have a marriage ka patrika also, and so many people ate and everything, all the rituals were done. Plus, please understand, if the girl is less than 18, that marriage is all null and void. So these are the true controversies I thought that worth discussing. Follow the law and do not let the law follow you. And I have always believed that do legally correct and ethically, morally correct work rather than wanting to make a fast buck. I am not saying FOGSI people do it, but some people do it to earn a little bit more money. And these are the ones where they are in a soup, then it is very, very, very difficult for us to do anything there. So thank you. If there are any questions, I'll take. MTP in a minor, I have excluded the clinical things. I have only included the legal things in this. So I take the questions if there are any. Thank you so much.
Sir, there is one question in the chat box. Can we routinely prescribe contraceptives for a minor girl if she asks? Does FOGSO, come into this? Because she's a minor.
So this is a problem about adolescents asking for contraception, so especially OC pills. So on your prescription, you will write irregular menses, or you can write dysmenorrhea, or you can write breast tenderness, you can write PMS, and then you can give OC pills. So do not write a diagnosis for which you will give OC pills to anybody. So that's a shorter way out. Actually, if she comes and tells you that she is having sexual relations with somebody, you have to inform to the police then also. But I know if you everybody keeps on informing the police like this, your practice will stop. And people will have, other than that also, people will do a lot of ruckus. I know of one doctor who informed the police, and that girl had come with her real brother. And in the evening, a mob of 15-20, all her relatives from Mumbai came and started threatening the doctor that why you inform? You do MTP. If you don't want to do MTP, we will get it done by somebody else. Now they have to. Then I went there. I explained to them that it is very important for the doctor to tell, because if you do not inform, then the doctor will be informed. So these are some controversies there. But as on today, the way the act stands, mandatorily we have to report, and there's no two ways about it.
So, Manish, will it be safe to say that if the patient comes to us with a history of sexual intercourse, but she's not yet pregnant or her pregnancy is not confirmed, then we need not really inform the police and write irregular menses, and till we have a confirmed report, don't enter into FOGSO?
FOGSO, I agree on two things. One, legally, if you do not inform, you are doing something wrong. But if you intend not to inform and not to get, this is a off-the-dash solution that you can obviously write irregular menses, and you will nowhere in your paper or your history you write that the patient is sexually active.
True.
So in your personal history you will just don't mention anything. Sexually inactive also don't write, and sexually active also don't write. So this is one way of circumventing the thing. But truthfully, if you see the act, you have to inform even this. And I have the third controversy. It is a little controversy because what happens is now our kids are of that age, 18, 19, etc., 17, 18, 19. And lot of times I get phone calls from the kids who are my friends' children. So maybe my friends' children or somebody who knew them, they'll say, ki, don't tell my father, he's your close friend, or don't tell my mother, he's your close friend, she's your close friend. I need contraception, or I need post-emergency contraception, etc. So this is tricky situation number 3. You have to, I generally call them, give them a good counseling session that, okay, you are using contraception, but the problem is if the other person is more than 18 years, then that person may be arrested. So you may be loving that person. It is doing more harm to that person.
Correct.
So one very famous case which happened here in Pune was there was this gynecologist couple who had a 16 or 17-year-old son. He was, I think, in first year engineering, and they had asked for because he failed in first exam, so they had asked for a private tuitions from a teacher who was 26 or 27 years old, and she used to come to his house to teach every day. Now they got into an affair, etc., and that lady got pregnant. And this 17-year-old declared at his house that I want to marry her and I love her, etc. So, then what happened was a lot of jagda between the parents and that lady. And that lady went to the police station and complained that the boy has raped me. But eventually she got arrested because the boy was 17 and she was 27. So the offense under POXO Act is for a person who's more than 18. So she got arrested, and then lot of ruckus, we got a bail for her. So, these are small things that we need to discuss, tell our kids. Just now, my daughter is 19. So I'm last 2 years or almost 3 years, maybe once a week or once in 10 days, I sit with her and discuss all these issues. They have to know. Otherwise, counseling our patients, you have to counsel our family members also.
Well, that is true, sir. Many times, no, these kids, they do not know that such and such law exists, as Shobha madam also was telling. So they just have these kind of romantic relationships or affairs or whatever, thinking that they can get away with it. But especially, I think there are a lot of boys who are, without knowing, they come under this act. And we have recently had one case. Still think about that girl. She was 26 weeks of pregnancy, 5 grams of hemoglobin. We admitted her, we gave one transfusion, but she came through the one-stop crisis center. Everything was done this police did not take the complaint. We insisted, we went through superintendent, and finally we informed the police, and then the drama started. The parents didn't want to, that whole thing to be known in the town, and she took away the girl. And they went around all the private practitioners. Nobody had offered it, considering the case. And I still think what must have happened. They have took the girl and went away. They did not want, they just.
Madam, I know what must have happened.
They
Some dye somewhere.
Without
Madam,
informing
some
the
dye
police.
somewhere must have aborted her without even batting an eyelid.
Nowadays, it is not that easy.
Not
Also.
that easy, yeah.
Not that easy.
So another point from POXO is that it is mandatory for everybody. We had one of our POGS members called me. This was around 1.5 or 2 years ago, probably. She said that she has a girl. She has seen just now a patient, a girl who's 17 years and some 8-9 weeks pregnant. Because that time the new MTP Act had not come. So MTP pill were to be given only up to 7 weeks, and this girl was 9 weeks. So I said, okay. She said, we have just got a sonography done. It's 9 weeks, 4 days or something. So I told her entire procedure. We informed to the police. Everything done. The police came. They took products of conception. Acknowledgement was given. She did MTP in the evening. That girl went home. Next day we talked. She said, now I also know how to follow it step by step. And that day in the evening, the police went to the person who did sonography, the sonologist. And they said, why you have not informed? You did sonography, you generated a report. On your report, you are writing age as 17 years and you are writing pregnancy 9 weeks, 4 days. That means you have a knowledge that this is less than 18 and pregnant. And you have handed over the report to the patient, but you have not informed. Now a lot of chaos. So then I talked to the police. I said, she had to inform also, but it just missed out, etc. But finally, we had to give a lot of vitamin M, Vitamin M. I have 2 M's in my life.
Yes.
I have 2 M's in my name, but not much of vitamin M. But we had to.
But this is a very valid point, Dr. Manish, that, as we are educating our own members as gynecologists, we also need to educate other practitioners that if they see people or they see children who are minors, they also have an equal responsibility to inform. It is not only the gynecologist who is responsible for this. So we need to make this awareness nationwide for everyone.
Manish sir, you had a YouTube recording which you shared when you did the similar talk with IMI. I shared with my general faculty group of our medical college, saying that you all please go through this, because we had to convince them so much that we have to report to the police. It took us a lot of this thing.
But Dr. Kiran, sometimes patients come, ours is the charitable hospital. The girls come with the complaint of pain in abdomen. We just send them to the sonologist, and the sonologist was too smart. The girl was 17 years and 12 weeks pregnant, and he reported to police, and then police came to our colleague and just to harass her, this case is coming under POXO, and why didn't you inform? That the poor gynecologist again and again saying, girl said she had a
the police refused to take the report, and our administrative colleagues and all.
So then there comes the role of the organization. When
So
all
we have to
this
go-
fails,
we
that
have
is
to
where
go
the
to
organization
collectorate.
has to stand up.
Yes, we have to go to collectorate just to say
that
either
is
a
one
girl
thing,
hide the
correct.
last menstrual cycle's dates and girl hide that she is pregnant. The sonologist was right. He informed the police, but the gynecologist unnecessarily trapped. And as Manish Machwe sir said, lot of vitamin M always has to
Always
spend.
has to be the basic reason for harassment becomes that only most often. Because POXO is utilized as a means to earn money, as almost every act is, and we have to face it. I think Manish, hello Manish. So do you remember
Yes,
how
yes.
many webinars we did in the pandemic together
I know, ma'am.
on safe
I know.
abortion and contraception, and we discussed all
Absolutely.
this a
Absolutely.
lot,
So
Manish.
as you said,
And
ma'am,
what I'm just a minute, Gauri. I just wanted to bring home a fact to all. There are 3 committees here, so I think a lot can be achieved. What I thought was, for a very long time, I have been thinking that POXO Act in itself cannot be challenged, right? It is there. Once it is passed, it cannot be undone. But what we can bring from FOGSI is a request for the implementation angle, whether we can create a via media, not the police, but a via media social group which can take up these cases so that the client and family are not harassed by the knowledge that police is being informed. Because after all, what is the act? Is this actually a crime? It is just an answer to a physical need. Okay. And just like, I mean, every other biological need. So it need not be taken as a crime, but okay, as a misconduct. So whether we can change anything in the implementation, Manish, from FOGSI, whether leadership can take up this and say that there has to be a social group which can be informed rather than directly the police. Everybody will feel more comfortable, if there is such a cell which is built up for
The issue,
POXO.
ma'am,
Yeah.
you are absolutely right. But problem is no committee under the act is formed. So the act says that we'll form special juvenile police units, and they will also take the help of National Commission and State Commission of Women and Children. But National Commission or State Commission of Women and Children, are if you call there, we don't know. We don't send this. They only about juvenile justice and only about destitute children who are on road or children who have committed some crime. Otherwise, this we have to, in the present state. The problem, for example, there are so many friends who practice in the interior. They have 100 or 120 deliveries per month, out of which 80 deliveries are for girls who are less than 80. So my friend said, if I try and inform all 80, my practice will to go only, but people will beat me also. Why? What are you doing? So these are some controversies or problems which remain unsolved even today.
Very true.
So thank you.
Yeah, because that's what Dr. Shobha Gudi, that was a nice point. But the problem is that the act spells only that it is for basically to prevent sexual abuse. They have taken into consideration that any act before 18 is a sexual abuse, and then that act has been made. All these physiological needs were probably not addressed properly in expression of this act.
Correct. One thing which I noticed, that government after government, they do not take the healthcare providers into the loop when forming these laws. They absolutely leave us out. So how will our people get any justice? Because these girls are the one who would require maximum attention, and then we are putting them off by doing this, by bringing law into the picture. So I thought that from FOGSI, whether a statement can come, the POXO Act implementation advocacy or something like that, wherein we can request for via media and not directly the police force, so that there is less humiliation in the entire thing. So the humiliation part is very high. And it is like a couple's private life, however young they are, they also have their dignity. It is completely kind of opened and they feel very raw. And it's a bad beginning to their sexual reproductive health life. They are marred for life. I feel there will be long-term consequences as well, apart from the fact that we are not able to give them safe abortion. So we need to think about it.
In fact, when we were discussing about this act long ago, maybe in 2012, 13, when it came, and it was not, nobody knew what is happening. We really tried to get into the corporations, etc., and talk to them about what can we do to just see that the definition of minor be reduced from 18 to 16. Now what happens is less than 16, okay, everybody knows it's a crime, but 16 to 18 is one gray area where adolescents would, maybe less than 16, very few, more than 16. So even that, but this being a central act, if you have to do anything, you have to either put a writ in Supreme Court or you have to contact Parliament, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha to ask your legislatures and the standing committee to go into the act and get some amendment or something, which is really very difficult.
I'm
So as a
requesting an implementation via media. I'm not saying the law. Of course, once it is passed, even Brahma cannot, redo the thing. Why we should beat our heads against the wall for something we cannot do? We cannot change. So accepting the change, fine, but can there be some help for both providers and clients? So, this informing the police directly, and they being so insensitive, they don't know anything about sexual reproductive health. They will be very kind of matter of fact, and they would want to do everything, and in the process the entire dignity of the situation is lost. We are not providing health care, we are just practicing defensive medicine at the cost of a young couple who came to us for help. So that kind of is so counterproductive, and I feel that it is against the ethics of medical law. That is where we are not understanding. We are breaking confidentiality, which
Madam,
is so
Madam,
supreme.
Madam Gudi, Madam, what you are saying absolutely right. And unfortunately, the police not only treat the couple as a culprit, they treat the doctor also as a culprit, as if we have, goaded them into having sex and getting pregnant. That is the attitude of the police. They will first make you the culprit.
Instead of
As if you are
empathy, instead of empathy and sensitivity, everyone is scared and fear and lot of stigma that is coming.
Exactly. I think, Madam, what Sobha ma'am says is correct. And additionally, Manish, I would also like to say, just as the MTP Act, of course, after a long and very hard battle, how MTP Act we were able to put in some changes. I think our people like you, the legal experts, should go for something to mitigate the problems of FOGSO. Seriously, I'm telling you, what you people are facing in metro city may be different, but in a second tier city like mine, when we refuse to do MTP, patient goes without batting an eyelid, they go to DAI, and the DAIs are aborting up to 26 and 28 weeks without any fear. Anything happens, they just go to their gaon and disappear. So that is done. And people are facing problem because of that. And this is what we need to tell the law, that because of these stringent rules, the patients are forced to take help from unqualified people.
Unsafe abortions.
Unqualified people, yes. And the qualified ones are all stepping behind because they want to save their skin first. Unfortunately, that is a fact. Yeah.
I think this can go on and on, but
I know.
happy today
But
all of you
it is good that it is being discussed. I think that it can be the first step. I have a lot of hopes from Manish. I feel that he is very strong. He can do something.
Medical legal activist.
We always it's FOGSI, ma'am. I am just one small soldier in FOGSI, and with the backing of FOGSI, all of you are seniors to guide. Definitely, let's see something. My two things which I
statement करो ना आप FOGSI statement के लिए statement के लिए crusade करो. Implementation का कुछ करो, FOGSI implementation.
Yeah, two things which I said, if we have a GR or an amendment. One I told you was reduce the age of minor from 18 to 16. That was one.
That won't happen now. It is already done. I mean, the damage is done.
This was one thought. And another thought was mandatory reporting only in consultation with or with the connivance of a legal guardian who is there. So let us put the burden of reporting on that legal guardian who gets this pregnant lady to you, not on you yourself. These two things. If these two things achieved, then probably thoda will be comfortable. That's what
I think. Social welfare groups will be more compassionate for the couple rather than law. Law is already there. The police is already there. If we can have some support, it's a group which helps, social welfare group dedicated to this. That is what I think we should.
Ma'am, there is State Commission of Children and National Commission of Children. Now, the problem again I told you is that POXO Act mentions a very different machinery for managing these cases, and in which police play a very important role. Whereas the Juvenile Justice Act, which came in 2001, the amended act, it mentions about child welfare committees, etc., and all those homes. So is, they would have juvenile justice, they would not come to POCSO. So a lot of complicated issues. I mean, I have talked to all these people, National Commission of Women, State Commission of Women, even for ART or service bill, I gave them presentations and put my this thing forward. But
This is way more important than ART bill. I'm telling you, this
I
is
know.
way more important, because it is our children which we are meddling with. Their minds we are meddling with. Manish, I just wanted to say one more thing is that if you do wish to look at a medical legal angle or a via media medical legal expert here or a legal expert, then there should be help for the doctor to discern between a coercive act or a sexual offense act as against consensual sex, and that can
That's
be dealt with
difficult.
differently. It is very difficult, I know, but if at all we can make progress, it is in these small ways only, and then probably then some of them who are
The
responsible
issue
for
of consent
coercion
comes,
maybe
ma'am. Issue of
they will
consent.
deserve the police intervention,
No,
not the consent. The
issue of
consensual
consent. I mean, the minor is not eligible to give a consent is what makes the whole thing.
That's what we can't meddle with POCSO Act, but with the implementation, really, FOGSI can do something, is what I have
Thank
strongly.
you, sir. Thank you,
felt.
Manish, sir.
I think-
We'll expect you to get over to FOGSI to put some implementation and some law that can help us all.
I think the least
in
that
this.
we can do is that, like Shobha Gudi ma'am has said that, and Dr. Manish has said that we need a PIL for this. So before we have a PIL, we need to have data. Like Supriya said, they land up into unsafe abortion. So we just need to pick up those 16 to 18-year-olds and we need to collect data. How many came with consensual sexual act? How many came coercively? And where did they finally land up? And if we have data, then that is what the court will start.
Those missing cases which have gone out of our fold into unsafe or illegal kind of things, that data is totally missing. I don't know really.
Yeah, that is what data collection
I
is.
think we
Another
should,
thing that FOGSI
Supriya,
can bring in. FOGSI can bring in the
we
data
have
collection.
we have to finally
Yeah,
this
end the
thing.
program.
But
All
we
of you
have-
champions.
Thank you very much.
Adolescent health,
Then
take
happy
it
ma'am
forward.
today. Actually, we got wonderful faculty and chairs, and Manish sir, thank you so much. It was delayed.
So much, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks
Thank you
all of
once
you.
Thank you,
again.
Dr.
Thank you.
Gauri.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Dr.
Everybody
Supriya
join.
Square.
Bye,
Thank you,
Sanjeev.
Sheil.
Bye.
Thank you.
And
Thank
so,
you.
on behalf of both the committees, I request Dr. Kiranmai, madam, can you just sum up with a vote of thanks?
I'll be very quick. Just we got this idea of working together, and this UDAAN name was given, thought of by Supriya. So this the starting program has given us a lot of impetus and encouragement to carry forward. And having all of you seniors, past chairpersons and past committee chairs, and who are such seniors like Krishnendra Gupta sir, Parul Koddawala sir, and then Rosa Ulai ma'am, Shobha Gudi ma'am, Manish sir, and everybody joined, and really wonderful suggestions and discussions. I have learned a lot today how to go forward, and I hope and we understand that your guidance will be there in all the steps that we take. I thank Rishikesh Pai sir, despite his being very, very busy. He joined and he gave his future direction and his vision for FOGSI this year. As he said, Badlav and gender equality. Both of these things apply to our both committees. Madhuri madam, Alka madam, and then everybody, all the chairpersons and the faculty from NIMHANS, Dr. Veena and Dr. Sundar Nagar, Supriya, Jyoti, then Kalpana, Aruna Suman, Vinita madam, Dr. Gauri. Thank you so much. We did go beyond, our expected sessions, but all the talks were really, really interesting.
This
They're not
field
the,
is of passion. What to do?
I know,
It
yes, they're
generates
not
lot of
the
passion.
typical, crowd pullers,
Yes,
but still we had wonderful.
Yeah, but those who want to
faculty
change
want to
some things
join,
will
yes.
definitely listen. Yes, yes. Don't lose
That
heart.
is-
Ma'am, can we have a recording
I
of
have done
this?
a committee like that.
Ma'am, can we have a recording of this? It is so important. All the slides were really wonderful.
Yeah, I think
We'll just find out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Shri.
Kiranmai ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you very much. And thank you, everyone. Good night.
And let
Thank you,
us all
Dr.
join.
Gauri.
Let us join Manish for a cup of tea.
I think there
having
is
his
a
tea alone.
recording.
Yes.
Yes, madam.
I hope that is tea only.